So shall we head to our next property?
Please.
Yeah, great.
Great, come on, let's go.
Coming up, will one of my last two properties be the perfect one for Bob and Lucretia? Life in the Sun, sponsored by Our Time, the dating site for singles over 50.
Please sit down and good evening. Good evening and welcome to the meeting of the Council. My name is Councillor Caroline Smith. I'm the Mayor of Wokingham and will chair this meeting. Before we start, I would like to go through a few preliminaries. Please note that the meeting is currently being webcast live. A reminder that members do need to stand when speaking in the chamber. And may I remind everyone that I intend to adhere strictly to the timings set out in the Constitution. Thank you. Are there any apologies?
No apologies, and we have Pauline Hallier-Simons online.
So Chris Johnson did send his apologies.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
Harry Bass sends apologies. He's had a family bereavement.
Thank you for informing us. And now may I sign the minutes of the meeting held on the 20th of October 2022 as a correct record.
Chris.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, I believe Graham Howe and Jackie Rance also sent apologies. Sam Act. So I don't know how these have all gone astray.
Sorry, can I have those names again, please?
Graham Howe, Jackie Rance and Sam Akhtar.
Thank you. Now, can I have a show of hands that the minutes of the meeting on the 20th of October is correct. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Does anybody wish to declare any interest in any item on the agenda? And you need to specify which agenda item this is. Thank you. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I am a director of WBC Holdings and Loddon Homes, and that will be covered in agenda item 81.
Thank you. Councillor Gregor Murray.
Madam Mayor, I need to declare an interest in motion 495 as I am a resident of William Heelis Way.
Thank you. Councillor Stephen Conway, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I need to declare an interest that's identical to Clive Jones's. I'm a non-executive director of Loddon Homes and WBC Holdings.
Thank you. And Councillor Prubray, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Same interest in item 81, but in my case, I'm a director of the WBC Holdings, Berrybrook Homes and WHL.
Thank you. And Councillor David Hare, please.
Sorry, Councillor number 82. Number 81, I'm a director of Optalis.
Thank you. Is that everybody? Thank you. Right, and now moving on to Mayor's announcements. I'm very sorry at the beginning of this announcement with this, bringing you this sad news of Councillor San Romani has passed away recently, and I would like to ask Councillor Stephen Conway to give us a short eulogy, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillors will know of Sam from his recent involvement in Woodley Town Council, but you may not be as aware that he was formerly a Wokingham Borough Councillor for Bullmarsh and Whitegates Ward. I think it's fair to say that Sam was not a regular speaker in the council chamber, but he diligently pursued the business of ward councillor, seeking to represent his community to the best of his ability. Quiet and unassuming, Sam was unfailingly courteous, friendly and well-intentioned. I'm sure all councillors will want to join me in offering our condolences to Sam's friends and family.
Thank you, Councillor Conway. Thank you. I'm now moving on to a small announcement. The next part of tonight is to announce this month's winners of the Mayor's Award. Firstly, 2 individuals followed by 1 group. The nominations are extremely well written, describing a fantastic bunch of outstanding individuals. Unfortunately, because of time constraints, I have to summarise them, and hopefully I've done them justice, and there will be a formal award ceremony next spring. First, we have Beverly Knight, who was nominated by Adele Baker, Sharon Branch, Joe and Ivan Kuan. This lady is part of the Finch Hampstead village community. In her nomination, it says that she is the heart of that community. She initiates many events from shopping evenings to fetes. That is not enough for Beverly. She also helps out at schools, volunteers for many groups, and is a marvellous fundraiser. How this lady finds time to do so much is amazing, and as such, deserves the recognition from not just her community, but the whole of Wokingham. The next is Dexter Rose, nominated by Samantha Wilson. In this nomination, I was touched by a young man who has achieved so much in his young life. He's just 10 and way beyond his years. This young man is involved in fundraising for the Royal Berkshire Hospital by running marathons during the first lockdown and camping out for a whole month to raise funds for Camp Mohawk. Not content with just raising funds, he also organised food bank collections and set up Dexter's Little Library based in Whitley, making sure no child goes without access to books during the summer holidays. Dexter is caring, generous-spirited young man and well deserved this award. The last line in the nomination reads, Dexter makes the world a better place. And I'm looking forward to finding out what he will achieve in his life. Now for an organisation. Link Visiting is nominated by Lucy Seal, High Sheriff of Wokingham. Link are working hard to reduce loneliness throughout the borough. For over 20 years, they have created vital, life-enhancing social connections for many older residents in the borough, with over 400 volunteers who are currently making 500 people feel valued and connected. With the coming festive season, they are working extra hard to bring Christmas spirit to those who would otherwise be alone. I do have a quote from a Link friend. I'm so grateful to the Links for their care and kindness during a difficult, lonely time in my life. COVID brought into focus how difficult loneliness can be. It's not just one day, it's weeks, months, and even years of feeling isolated. So I'm happy to award Link Visiting for all their great work in combating loneliness. Thank you. Can I give everybody a clap? Thank you, everyone. And lastly, I would like to thank everyone who's contributed to the reverse advent calendar for the food bank. The response is fantastic and there's still time to give more. I thank everyone, not just from myself, but on behalf of the food bank and our residents. And it might take several carloads to get to the food bank. So a very big thank you from me. Thank you. Right. Now moving on to public question times. We have 30 minutes for this, and it's a reminder that they must relate to the original question. And okay, thank you. The first question I have is from David Portas to ask a question of the Executive Member of Environment, Sport and Leisure. Thank you.
Good evening. I have a question regarding the 3G proposal for Maiden Early School. The football facility plan is founded on the premise that it needs to be within the Wokingham Borough area. It is stated that teams have to travel from outside the area to play. Wokingham Borough Council only became apart by the dissolution of Berkshire County Council, and its borders are arbitrary and they run through urban and suburban areas. Residents of Early and Wokingham Borough will typically travel outside of these nominal boundaries for work, shopping, leisure, healthcare and education on a daily basis, and many of these journeys are within walking distance. In fact, Maiden Early School has 2 sites in Early, and even these are in separate boroughs. The technical appraisal did not initially identify Maiden Early as the most suitable location. In fact, that was Laurel Park Recreation Ground, which I believe has been rejected for many of the same reasons which make Maiden Early School an inappropriate site. So why did the site appraisal deliberately disregard the nearby Soljob playing fields, which were bequeathed to the town specifically for sport and leisure use?
Good evening. Soljob Park was actually bequeathed to a trust. The trustee is now being Reading Borough Council. Early Town Council has a lease from Reading, I believe it's 50 years, which started in 2001, and they can only operate the park within the terms of their lease. Any building work must be approved by the lessor and must be within the rules of the trust.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I do, please. Okay. So why did the consultation recommend a school site that already has sufficient all-weather playing areas? Approximately 50% of the school's available playing areas are already covered in all-weather playing surfaces. The proposed pitch would be unavailable for community use during school hours. The residential setting would almost certainly require mitigation on the hours of use, further restricting the community access and making the costs involved unviable. Surely the money should be better spent on a site that allows unrestricted community use and actually augments the existing facilities at Maiden Early?
I cannot tell you why Maiden Early was chosen, because it was chosen before we took over the council.
Thank you. I have Sandra Spencer to ask a question of the Executive Member for Environment, Sport and Leisure. Thank you.
Good evening. We are all aware that Wokingham Borough Council is in a dire financial situation and is seeking to reduce costs wherever possible. The proposed 3G pitch at Maiden Early School in Early was priced at £800,000 before recent inflation, to be paid for by the Football Association and the council. Bearing in mind, building projects can run seriously over budget, and that the school has perfectly adequate sports facilities for all pupils on roll, both on site and at the nearby Soldier playing fields, is it wise to press ahead with the plan? And who will be liable for any shortfall if there are any unexpected extra costs?
The school have advised the council that the facilities provided for students are at capacity. The existing Sandrest Astro pitch is considered to be not adequate to accommodate the present volume of students. And if the pitch is unsafe due to freezing in colder weather, the PE curriculum is affected. The grass fields are also not suitable for PE activities, according to the head of the school, and a 3G pitch would have benefits for both the school and for local partner football clubs. The council did make capital provision for the project and would work in partnership with the Football Foundation to arrive at a point where the council's contribution and the Football Foundation's contribution fully cover the build and unexpected costs. Whilst officers have been in discussion with the Football Foundation in relation to provision of more community football facilities in the local area, no application has been made, as full planning permission would first be required. In turn, a planning application will be contingent upon the outcome of the review that we are in the process of conducting. That review will closely examine the financial viability of the project in the worsening economic circumstances of the council.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary? Thank you.
Since submitting the question, I have read the council's financial plan from last February, when the preferred location for the pitch was Laurel Park. In that, the council doubled its potential contribution to £600,000. That was before this year's inflation. Laurel Park would not have needed the expensive levelling of the playing field, retaining walls, a complicated drainage tank, noise abatement, or so many surveys. So I can only presume the figure of £300,000 from the council for Maiden Early, which was quoted at the consultation evening in September, was wildly optimistic. Councillor Clive Jones recently said that the cost of the 3G pitch for Maiden Early was going up and up and up. Then Councillor Ian Shenton said our weekly refuse collections were costing too much money to continue. He asked, where are we going to find that money? I would suggest you start with the pot for the unnecessary 3G pitch. So how much is the council's current estimate for the pitch? And will it not be viewed as the council squandering money at a time when many people are so desperate they are turning to food banks, sitting in cold homes, worrying about how to pay the bills, and the council says it can no longer afford basic services such as weekly bin collections?
Effectively, the council has two major budgets. One is the capital budget, and one is known as revenue, which is where the day-to-day expenses, the reoccurring expenses are funded from. The two are not interchangeable. A 3G pitch, wherever it would be in Early, would be funded by capital, not by revenue.
Thank you. Jeremy Evershed, a question for the Executive Member for Environment, Sport and Leisure, please.
Thank you for your previous commitment to closely scrutinise the business case for the plastic pitch, given the council's financial situation. The council can't afford this proposal to become a burden on the public purse, with ongoing maintenance, administration, and the £25,000 per annum sinking fund commitment. given the threat elsewhere to services. I believe you responded to my question on potential noise reduction fences previously, or didn't respond to it, but in response to other noise questions, you did suggest the service level agreements would apply to people using the pitches. I'm familiar with SLAs in a commercial scenario where an underperforming supplier is penalised. Can you please elaborate on how SLAs would work in the maiden early setting, giving examples where the council has applied penalties and received payment, and at the same time retained their sports customers over the last 10 years to demonstrate how this is a successful strategy, as I'm not convinced.
The service level agreement provides a framework on how the partners will work together to promote and develop football and sport within the community. The SLA also outlines the commitment that key partners must make to support the project from a hiring perspective, such as paying for usage and committing to a programme of use. The agreement covers a host of elements that include the operational and management side of the site, the noise management plan, hirer behaviour, code of conduct, school usage, club usage, and the no smoking and no dogs policy. The council have not had to deal with any serious issues or introduce penalties at other managed 3G sites due to the guidelines the SLAs set out. Clubs are aware of the scarcity of floodlit 3G and work with their members to ensure that they do not jeopardise their bookings.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes. Do you think that's a realistic position, that actually you will not get any complaints at all for this pitch and others throughout the borough?
I can only reiterate that the council has not had to deal with any situations like that so far, and not had to impose penalties. We can't predict the future.
Thank you. I understand David Walker was going to ask a question of the Executive Member for Environment and Leisure, but he's not here this evening. So Sandra Spencer's going to ask on his behalf.
In order to create a level base for the proposed 3G pitch at Maiden Early School, an area shown as over 8,500 square metres, it may be necessary to transport and spread over 6,000 cubic metres of foundation material on the school field before the artificial pitch can be laid. Taking into account the many Maiden Early residents strongly voiced concerns to council members about issues of public safety, environmental damage and health matters relating to this proposal, does the council believe that such a costly and intrusive project can be justified?
Well, we would retain the base of the existing Astro pitch to minimise the amount of base material needing to be brought in. That material will be checked for adequacy and relayed in accordance with the new 3G specifications. The project would then bring into the site base material for the remaining 50%, 60% of the area of the new 3G pitch, to the same level as the existing Astro pitch. We recognise that this would potentially be disruptive, but this aspect of the work would be a maximum of 2 weeks to be completed, which would limit both the environmental and safety concerns. That this would be part of the work needed to provide a new 3G pitch is one of the aspects being taken into consideration as we review the viability of the project, alongside the financial viability and a detailed analysis of the consultation responses.
Thank you. Helen Palmer was to ask a question of the Executive Member for Climate Emergency and Residents Services. I understand she's not here, so can you give her a written answer, please?
Am I okay to actually read out my answer? Is that okay?
Don't think there's a problem, is there? Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So the question was about the...
I'm on the phone here.
Ah, you're online. I'll let you read out your question, Helen.
Sorry, my apologies.
Well, I was trying to get through online, but I had to come through on the phone. So, yeah, that's the best I can do. This is my question. Will Wokingham Council support the Climate and Ecology Bill? A recent report from the Natural History Museum with the RSPB rated England as the 7th most nature depleted country in the world. UK woodland cover is just 13% of land area. European average is 38%. Our bare uplands contribute to lowland flooding. The government plans to plant 30,000 hectares of woodland per year. At this rate, it would take 10 years to increase cover from 13 to 14%. The Environment Act is a post-Brexit bill looking at selected issues. It does not tackle the core problems at the heart of the ecological crisis and has nothing whatsoever to do with climate change. Climate and nature are inextricably connected and must be addressed together. This bill, drafted by scientists, legal experts and ecological economists, requires the UK to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, to actively restore biodiverse habitats rather than merely protect them, and to stop damaging our natural world. No other proposed legislation would protect important ecosystems like woodlands, peat bogs and wetlands. The bill now has support of MPs across 8 political parties and of 203 councils, including in Oxford City, Oxfordshire and Henley. Will Wokingham Borough Council become the 204th?
Hi, Helen, and thanks for your question. The UK has failed to meet 17 of the 20 Aichi biodiversity targets and actually gone backwards on 6 of them. We are actually the most nature depleted G7 country, which is truly shocking, quite frankly. I'm aware that this question was raised at a council meeting in September last year. The response had been that even though the council did recognise the intrinsic link between climate change and nature and the relevance of the bill itself would have not provided the council with the statutory powers and responsibilities we needed to address the climate and ecological emergency. In addition to this, it was felt at the time that the council had multiple plans already in place to address the climate and ecological emergency, including the Climate Emergency Action Plan and the Biodiversity Action Plan, and would have imminently been subject to additional legislations on this, including the Environment Bill. In consideration of this, it was decided at the time that Wokingham Borough Council would have not committed its support to the bill. As things stand now, there's a new administration in front of you. The Biodiversity Action Plan has been sadly collecting dust for some time, with many actions not happening, but my colleague Ian Shenton is working on rectifying this, making action on improving nature a priority. We still believe that more statutory powers need to be given to local authorities to address both the climate and ecological emergencies. However, the bill aims to set binding targets for central government. If approved, to meet those targets, government will need to ensure additional powers as well as funding are devolved to local authorities. Supporting the introduction of legally binding targets sends a clear message that Wokingham Borough Council takes the climate and ecological emergency seriously. Therefore, I agree to commit Wokingham Borough Council to publicly supporting the Climate and Ecology Bill, and we hope that you will join us in lobbying to ensure that included in that bill is an amendment to provide local government the devolved powers and funding it needs to meet the targets the bill sets.
Thank you. Thank you. Do you have a supplementary?
Oh, no, I don't. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, can I have Peter Humphreys to ask a question of the Executive Member for Active Transport and Transport and Highways, please?
Having declared a climate emergency and announced a black hole in the finances, it is perplexing that every night for the past year, the council has floodlit the White Elephant, unopened, can't park, can't ride facility at Copped Beach. Indeed, the flashing electric charge points are switched on 24/7, but also can't be used due to large blocks of concrete in front of them. At such a prominent spot adjacent to the principal approach road to the town, this sends out completely the wrong message and is highly embarrassing and costly. With no publicly announced plan to ever open the park and ride, and with the green gap destroyed, the council needs to consider repurposing the site. A high-rise block of flats would make a significant contribution to the housing target imposed on the borough and reduce the amount of virgin countryside that needs to be concreted over. Unlike most of the new housing developments around the town, there are road links directly onto the motorway network and direct bus links to the town and Bracknell. As a brownfield site, this clearly makes for a better development location than a greenfield site, Does the council have a view on this?
Thank you, Peter, for your question. The Park and Ride site was allocated as part of planning for all of the housing for the area and was paid for by a combination of the developers and Berkshire Local Enterprise Partnership, the LEP. A business case was approved by the LEP. However, COVID has changed travel patterns and has particularly impacted Park and Ride sites, which have yet to show any signs of recovery in the short term. We are looking at options for use of the site, including those wishing to use the charge points or to park and share a journey, for instance. However, with bus use at Park and Ride sites as it currently stands, we will not be funding a bus at this time. We continue to monitor Park and Ride usage in the area as well as nationally to determine how things are changing as we emerge from COVID-19. The lights are dimmed at the site and are activated during hours of darkness for both safety and security. They are LED and are designed to meet the minimum illumination level required for the site to enable CCTV to operate, as well as being energy efficient.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes. They may well be dimmed at night, but compared to the pub car park next to it, they're considerably brighter. And as for security, there's nothing really to destroy, just a load of tarmac. So surely the council should cut its losses now. We've got this black hole and make some better use of the site. I mean, for instance, the 3G pitch that everyone's been talking about so far tonight, or the housing that I suggested. And the floodlights would be adequate for that.
Thank you for your suggestion. I will take that into account. But as I said, we are looking at options. So watch this space.
Thank you. Now can I have Jim Badu to ask a question of the Executive Member for Environment, Sport and Leisure, please.
Hello. During the recent consultation evenings at Maiden Early School regarding the 3G pitch, it was explained to us that the ground level close to residential properties would be raised to create a level surface since the current ground slopes towards the properties. It has also been explained that acoustic fencing will be put in place in an attempt to reduce noise levels. Can you please explain A, how high the ground will be raised by, B, how high the fencing will be, and C, how close it will be to residential properties?
Thank you, Jim. The ground would be raised to the same height as the existing Astro pitch, which is approximately 1.5 metres higher than currently at the lowest point. This would be confirmed in the detailed design stage of the project. The acoustic fencing, the height for the pitch would be 3 metres, in addition to which there would be a strong mesh fence of 4.5 metres with the purpose of ball retention, as well as supporting the security of the pitch from unauthorised entry. Finally, the exact location is yet to be confirmed because it would only be confirmed if the project were to proceed to the detailed planning and design stage. But best estimate, it would be approximately 8 metres to the rear boundary of the closest residential property.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary?
Yeah. Thank you for your answer, which leads to the following observations. 1, the committee report of 12th October 2018 for the Embrook 3G pitch states that it's 33 metres from residential garden boundaries, compared with a much closer 8 metres you've stated for Maiden Early. 2, sound propagation follows an inverse square law, which means that the outdoor sound level in residential gardens in Maiden Early will be a factor of 17 or 12 decibels higher than at Embrook, 3. The committee report for Embrick stated that the outdoor sound levels will only be 1 decibel below the World Health Organization limits. This means that at Maiden Early, it will at least be 11 decibels higher than the World Health Organization limits. Therefore,
Excuse me, sorry, you've had a minute. Thank you.
Sorry.
Can you quickly sum?
Yeah.
Thank you.
How can the council justify spending public money on a proposal that is at high risk of failure at the planning stage due to the impact on residential amenity, for example, visual amenity and outdoor noise levels, which are much higher than the limits set by the World Health Organization?
It's the factors like that which are being highlighted as a result of the consultation that are going to be looked at very closely. We are looking at every aspect, and I can't say any further than that, but we are considering every single aspect that the consultation has raised, the responses and your own questions have raised.
Thank you. And Karen Brown to ask a question, the Executive Member for Environment, Sport and Leisure, please.
Thank you. We are told the Football Foundation identified 524 football teams in the borough. We've not seen this mysterious list. Apparently, footballers will be encouraged to walk or cycle to Maiden Early School, but we have no idea how many live close enough for this to be realistic. We are told the remainder will be within a 45-minute drive to Maiden Early, which means they will be coming from far and wide. When will you publish the full list of teams detailing what facilities they have already, whether the same players are included in the multiple teams, what ages they are, why their needs cannot be met more locally, and how often they play?
Yes, thank you, Karen. The Football Foundation prepared a local football plan in 2019 and found that Wokingham Borough had then a total of 524 teams. The plan is readily available on the Football Foundation website, and you go there and click find your local plan and search for Wokingham. You can see the full thing. The 524 included 83 adult male teams, 14 adult female teams, 144 male youth teams, 50 female youth teams, 3 disability teams and 230 mini soccer teams. Some clubs already benefit from our investment in modern floodlit 3G pitches to train on midweek and to host games at weekends. However, many teams still train in environments such as noisy indoor halls, sand-dressed astro pitches, school courts or expensive commercial sites. Local to Maiden Early, Laurel Park FC has 33 teams. 46% of their members are female. They train at the school and use the grass pitches at Laurel Park to play league fixtures on Saturdays. White Knights FC have 18 teams defined by age. They train in indoor halls, hockey astro pitches, school courts and commercial sites. From September to April, teams are likely to train once a week, play a fixture at weekends. Team players are mostly local, as I can attest from the number of emails I've received from local parents whose kids are in the teams. And teams visiting for fixtures will be travelling from a little further away.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary?
How many 3G pitches will be enough to keep the Football Foundation happy, and how much land are you prepared to cover in rubber to placate them?
We are actually carrying out a full analysis, a full exercise at the moment. Officers have been tasked to do this, which will itemise every single sport asset that we have and its position within the borough and its proximity to population centres. When that is done, we will know where there are shortfalls and where there aren't.
Thank you. Thank you for, if you'd like, you're welcome to stay, but if you'd like to go, I understand. Thank you. Okay, can we continue, please? I'm now moving on to petition. Does anybody wish to submit a petition? Thank you. Mike Smith, would you like to, and Rebecca Margetts, thank you. Mike Smith, would you have 3 minutes to summarise your petition, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for the opportunity to present this petition. I'm actually presenting it on behalf of Jason Collins-Webb, a concerned resident of Early, who created the e-petition on the Wokingham Engage website. The signatories to this petition would like the Borough Council to install a new traffic light controlled pedestrian crossing to allow safe passage across the busy Wokingham Road in the area between the junction of Station Road and Kenton Road in Maiden Early. Wokingham Borough Council has declared a climate emergency and has embarked on a widespread consultation on measures for the borough to reduce its emissions. A key plank of the borough's strategy is around sustainable transport and ways of encouraging people to make more use of it. Only by making access to public transport as easy and as convenient as possible and safe will it encourage more people out of their cars. Early Station is a good example where this principle does not apply. The station is sandwiched between two busy fast roads, the A3290 motorway and the A329 Wokingham Road. Pedestrians accessing the station from the Woodley area have the convenience of a footbridge. Residents of Maiden Early and other station users, however, must run the gauntlet of the Wokingham Road with its 40-mile-an-hour speed limit. As a main A road and a key arterial route into Reading, the traffic on this stretch of road is particularly hazardous. There's fast-flowing traffic of approximately 800 vehicles per hour towards Reading in the morning. That's 1 car every 4 seconds. Traffic in the opposite direction is less heavy at 400 cars, and there's another 150 that come out of Kenton Road, adding to the challenge. Obviously, in the evening, the reverse occurs. This is exacerbated due to the road width, which has to allow for a filter for turning into Kenton Road. The council has obviously recognised the hazardous nature of the road because there are existing crossings, but these are approximately 650 metres in one direction and 375 metres in the other. Whilst there are central refuges provided at the location, it can take a long time for a safe gap to appear, which tempts people to try to rush across them. When Jason moved to Maiden Early 17 years ago and commuted to London using the station as an able-bodied person, he found it challenging to cross this road. And it's extra difficult and daunting for children, for adults with children in pushchairs, the elderly and those with mobility issues. In the intervening years, traffic has only increased, and whilst preparing for this evening, on Tuesday morning, in the space of just 20 minutes, I witnessed 2 near misses at this location. I understand the traffic statistics suggest there have been no accidents in the last 3 years, but is that a good enough reason for not doing something? This petition, with its resident signatures, a supporting letter from Early Town Council and support anecdotally from local social media, shows there is a definite desire for this, and I would therefore commend the council to seriously consider this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a petition to hand in?
No, it's an electronic petition which has already been forwarded to Democratic Services.
Thank you. Thank you. Can I have a problem with the computer? We're going to have to adjourn for 10 minutes. I'm sorry about that, Councillor Margetts. Hopefully it'll be a quick 10 minutes. Is that all right? Thank you. We'll see you in 10 minutes. Thank you. Computer. Area had it. Oh. I might take this opportunity to go. You've only just come in. Already. Yeah. You see the amount of water I drink. I was trying. That's 10 past. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. We're now ready to go again. Sorry about that. Thank you. Don't ask me what the problem is. I have no idea. Thank you. Councillor Margetts, would you like to speak on your petition, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Before I present this petition, I would like to make clear this petition.
Point of order. Please.
Could I speak?
Sorry, can you sit down? What's your point of order, please?
I've got several points of order. The written version of the petition calls upon planning applications from Crest Nicholson to not be approved by the borough until formal planning application has been approved. This is in breach of 3.5.1.2c of the Constitution, 3.5.1.2e of the Constitution, 8.3.5, 8.3.51, 8.3.8 and 9.2.8.5.
Thank you. I'll take advisement on this.
Did she still speak on it?
Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Margetts, could you present your petition and then we will take it away on advisement to see if it can be accepted. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do appreciate that. What I wanted to say was I would like to make clear that this petition is on behalf of Arborfield Green residents and their wishes. After consultation with Democratic Services, residents are aware that Woking Borough Council are unable to enforce the request that further planning applications be refused due to planning law, but residents wish this petition to be heard on the request that WBC ensure that Crest Nicholson honour the Section 106 agreement and deliver the village centre. Since 2016, residents were sold properties in the new Garden Village community. As part of this shining new development, a village centre was coming soon with a supermarket, pub and shops, a centre for the new community of residents. Today, in November 22, where are we up to? Instead of a village centre, we have wasteland, unused buildings surrounded by a hoarding, where even the village centre coming soon sign has been removed. Newsletters with repeated failed promises, a broken Section 106 agreement where over 1,000 properties have been built and not 1 square metre of floor space of the village centre has been built. Residents who have lost trust in Crest Nicholson and Woking Borough Council to deliver their village centre. Residents have been very patient and understood the many reasons for delay, but over the period of 22 this year, commitments to move this project forward have repeatedly been broken. I list but a few. Announcement of an anchor tenant from the supermarket. It's not been announced. A further public consultation in September. It did not happen. A planning application for the village centre to be submitted in the autumn. It hasn't happened. Community services not completed, including a new community pavilion. The original pavilion stands derelict with vandalised broken windows, no running water or electricity after Crest Nicholson cut the supply. Children and families cannot even use a public toilet. The cricket pitch is unusable as Crest Nicholson failed to maintain it. Woking Borough Council now saying the reason for these current delays is the economic climate. Yet Crest Nicholson continue to build and sell even more properties. Residents have had enough and have lost complete faith in Crest and Woking Borough Council to deliver their village centre, and I completely understand why. As part of the Section 106 agreement, development should have begun when the 1,000th property was built. This was surpassed in 2019. Our petition that I hand in today on behalf of Arborfield Green residents has been signed by over 700 people, showing the strength of feeling and dismay. We are calling tonight on Woking Borough Council to stand up to developers and Crest Nicholson and hold them to account and to deliver their promised village centre without further delay.
Thank you. No, we got the car parking petition. Thank you. Hello. Thank you. We'd like to continue now with the petition debate on car parking charges. Oh, thank you. Councillor Jones?
Madam Mayor, could I propose that we extend this petition debate to an hour?
Yes. What part of the constitution would that be? It's all right. It's 4.2.12.p. Do you have a seconder?
Thank you very much for your help.
Thank you. Thank you. And we have a seconder, Councillor Conway. Thank you. Okay. Would everybody like to vote to extend this very important part of the debate to an hour? All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. We will now debate for an hour. I would like to ask Councillor Keith Baker, as petition organiser, to present his petition. You have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Liberal Democrats have gone on record to say that they are the listening party and will operate in an open and transparent way. So how are they doing to date? One of the most important key decision principles is consultation. Normally, the idea of consultation is to do it before a decision is made. The results of that consultation are then used to shape the decision. The Conservatives did it in 2018 over a small price change. The Liberal Democrats did it over the Woodlands Avenue cycleway proposals, the LCWIP plans, and waste collection. So they do know how to do consultations. So why did the Lib Dems not consult over these exorbitant increases? Who knows? Maybe they knew what the result was going to be. But we did it for them, resulting in over 4,000 responses, one of the largest expressions of disagreement on a change ever received. A new petition, here I have, but I haven't submitted it, from 40 businesses in Woodley Town Centre highlights the impact on them. These not only include independent retailers and the hospitality sector, but includes nationals like Waitrose, Lidl and Boots. So how did the Liberal Democrats wriggle out of this requirement? At the scrutiny meeting, the executive member said that the Traffic Regulation Order, or TRO, would satisfy this consultation requirement. A TRO has never been used like this before. A TRO is a legal process to implement changes and includes a 28-day period when comments can be made. No date has been provided when the TRO will be published. I do hope they are not trying to sneak it out to minimise comments. I wonder if they'll ignore these comments as well. Let's look at the business case behind the decision. Well, we'd like to do that, all of us, but there is no business case available to councillors or the public to examine. The only financial statement available is that there is a shortfall of £600,000 in parking services income. We'll hear this probably about 20 times when the opposition speak. Part of that business case would include the options considered, so they could be scrutinised. It was confirmed that other options were considered, but not published, despite there being an obligation for the executive to do so. To date, despite repeated requests for the business case to be published, we get complete silence. What did emerge was that the parking services included both the off-street car parks and the park and ride facilities. More probing extracted that the income loss was almost exclusively coming from the park and rides. The off-street park income was around 90% of pre-pandemic levels, and even higher in Woodley. So the off-street car park increases are there to subsidise the loss-making park and rides. Even worse, park and ride charges are not being increased at all. I wonder if any of the options considered was to close the park and rides or to increase their charges instead. I welcome Labour councillor Shirley Boyd's question later, suggesting exactly that. I wonder if she'll join us in voting against these increases. Repeatedly, claims have been made that these increases would not be needed if charges were raised each year. Wrong. Using Bank of England inflation rates, charges would be 34% to 92% lower than they're proposed. Repeatedly, claims have been made that the new charges will be similar to neighbouring areas and are competitive. Wrong again. The Lexicon, a huge new shopping centre in Bracknell, run the Princess Square car park, where charges are between 25% and 80% lower than our new charges. Even in Wokingham, the Elm Road NCP car park remains at the same level of our current charges, so it will be significantly lower than the new charges. That's happening in Wokingham. So, do Liberal Democrats listen to residents?
Councillor Baker, sorry, your time is up.
No, I've got another minute.
But, well, according to our timing, it's 5
Well,
minutes.
according to that, it's still a light.
It didn't go on till then.
It didn't go on till late. We've been timing it and you started.
I've just got 3 things to say. That's
Okay, three
Thank you.
things.
So
Thank
do
you.
Liberal Democrats listen to residents? No. They ignore the views of over 4,000 residents and 40 businesses and are likely to ignore 2-year-old comments. Do Liberal Democrats operate in an open way? No. They hide the business case from public scrutiny. Do Liberal Democrats operate in a transparent way? No. They hide the fact that the park and rides are the problem with the off-street
Sorry,
car parks
Councillor-
subsidising those losses. Thank you.
Sorry, I was very lenient there.
Thank
you. Do I have any questions or anybody wish to speak on this item? Thank you. We'll make a list. Thank you. And please keep your hands up if you wish to speak. Alison got a hand up. Yeah. Pauline. Greg O'Brien.
It's not inside. Yeah.
Okay. Super there. Okay. I think we've got everybody. Okay. Councillor Charles Maggett, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wanted to speak tonight to oppose the decision of the administration to raise most car parking charges across the borough. It's my belief this decision is against the best interests of residents, of businesses across the borough, and also it fails to address the fundamental problem it claims to solve. The strength of reaction to this move is demonstrated by the numbers of signatures on the petition. It also shows the view of the Conservative group is the view of the majority of residents. The borough has experienced a difficult few years. COVID lockdowns have decimated trade for local shops and restaurants. To recover properly, shops, restaurants and businesses in our town centres, now more than ever, need the council to create an environment that encourages people to visit our town centres. The decision to double most car parking charges, introduce evening, weekend and bank holiday charges is the polar opposite. It sends a signal out to avoid council car parks in the town centres and to our businesses that the council does not care about their future. At a recent overview and scrutiny meeting where this was discussed, it was admitted that no survey had been carried out to model the effect on footfall in our local centres. It's not even being considered. There are choices here. Shortly after taking control of the council, the group that now controls the council voted to spend an additional 300k every 4 years to have elections every 3 years out of 4, rather than once every 4 years. They gave themselves a nice round of applause after this vote. They prioritised their needs above the needs of residents. It's my understanding that car parking levels are now at approximately 90% of pre-pandemic levels. With a little more time, revenue from council-owned car parks would be at pre-pandemic levels. The big hole in the highways budget is from the park and rides, as my colleague Councillor Baker has commented. Officers told me today they do not know, basically, do not have a separate budget for park and rides. They do not know how big the black hole is, and also that the black hole could continue next year and the year after if basically no further steps are taken. There's no plan basically to get on top of this at the moment, and there needs to be one. I welcome what Councillor Fishwick said earlier about announcements coming, but it needs to happen now. At the moment, the only conclusion you can draw is that the decision to raise car parking charges is to subsidise the lack of demand for park and ride. Why has the council chosen to simply charge the motorist rather than resolve the problem? If it truly believed in park and ride, there would be an extensive publicity campaign to remind people that it's open, remind people it's available, and of the positive reasons to use it. It's perfectly possible that it may be several years that it comes back. It's also my belief the council should look within its own four walls for savings and efficiencies before coming to the resident with extra charges. There are currently 35 jobs on the WBC website as vacant. There are interim officers in the council costing the taxpayer well above fixed staff rates. We should lead by example and consider a recruitment freeze and replacement of interims to reduce costs before we go to the resident, first to double charges. I can't support this change, and I'd call on members who care about the people they represent to join our stance.
Sorry, time. Thank you. Councillor Paul Fishwick to speak next. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The cost of the car parking service is around 2.5 million annually and includes the off-street car parks as well as the park and ride sites. Two of our park and ride sites are closed, namely Winners Triangle, under construction, and the Conservative approved financial white elephant of Coppage Beach, which had a weak business case. However, although closed or never open in the case of Coppage Beach, some operational costs continue, as well as costs for ongoing maintenance, insurance and business rates. But with zero income and Mere Oak only operating at 25% and the off-street at 90% pre-COVID level, they do not cover the costs of running the service. To cover these revenue costs, the Borough Council needs to raise income from car parking charges, and any shortfall would need to be covered by taking other revenue funded raised through council tax, which is needed for the most vulnerable in our community. At the 28th of July 2022 meeting of executive, it was reported that there was a forecast budget deficit somewhere between 600,000 and 800,000, and this hasn't changed. Without taking urgent steps to close the gap, we will need to raise additional income or cut services, and the latter could impact on the most vulnerable. The previous Conservative administration did consider raising the car parking charges, as 500,000 of additional income was forecast in the draft MTFP report that was presented to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee on the 24th of November 2021. However, for whatever reason, the previous Conservative administration didn't go ahead with this and instead dipped into the reserves to cover it with 2.2 million. Taking funding from the reserves, like the previous Conservative administration did, is not an option open to us, as the reserves are now low. And we cannot allow this authority to be placed in the hands of central government like Slough and Thurrock, as the consequences would be devastating. Instead of helpful ideas, the Conservative group's response has been a petition to freeze the car parking charges. That clearly won't work. Residents expect their roads and footways to be surfaced and maintained to a high standard, but we can only do this if we have the funding available. If car parking charges are not increased, then the council's ability to continue to maintain the highway to the current standards will be significantly compromised, and cuts in essential services that protect the most vulnerable in our community. Thank you.
Councillor Swaddle next, please.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wasn't expecting to be called so early. I know that many of my colleagues will be speaking about the increase in hourly rates, but I particularly wanted to address the charging in the evenings in the dark, because I've had residents approach me that they're particularly unhappy about that. And it's not so much always going to shops, going to restaurants and bars, because I know Keith Baker addressed that many of our businesses in Woodley are very concerned. We had, was it 40? Sign a petition, which you will have read a letter in Wokingham today, showing the strength of concern from the businesses. But the Oakwood Centre, which is the Town Council's community building, in which we have a theatre and rooms for rent, many of our residents are coming to things such as the photography club, the flower club, and having to pay a charge in the car park on top of the sum to attend them is going to threaten the future of those societies. And I had one resident, and I think I might quote this resident, because other people have made this point too, that, vulnerable people, especially women, do not want to be purchasing tickets in the dark. Having to spend time at the ticket machine, then returning to your vehicle to put your ticket in the car makes me feel very uncomfortable. So I just would like members to reflect on that point when they consider that we're going to be charging people in the evenings in lonely dark car parks where we've got residents who might very well feel afraid at that time.
Thank you. Councillor Andrew Croy, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to start this by quoting the last Conservative lead member for Finance, John Kaiser, if I may, John. John has often said in meetings that I've been in that a broke council is no good to anyone. I'll say that again, a broke council is no good to anyone. And you know what? He was right, and he's still right. It's extraordinary that while this petition calls on the Lib Dems to reverse the rises, I've yet to hear any Conservative promise to reverse the rises should they regain control of the council. So perhaps if Pauline could make that promise now, make the promise to reverse the rises, that would be really helpful. Of course, she must also explain how she's going to find the 600k of savings or income from elsewhere, because we must balance the books. The council cannot be allowed to go broke. Money does not simply appear out of nowhere. The fact is, the Conservatives knew about the hole in the budget last year. They knew about the hole last year when officers came to them with a proposal, and they knew about it and they kicked it down the road. And the reason they have not promised to reverse the rises is because they know they would have to do exactly the same thing. I do understand the need for the Conservatives to campaign on local issues. They are so desperate to put as much distance between themselves and the economy-wrecking Conservatives in Downing Street as they can. I do get that. Trustonomics has been devastating for the country. But the way you distance yourselves from Trustonomics is not by bringing Trustonomics to Wokingham. And this is what the Conservatives are trying to do. Bills must be paid. I know John is wealthy enough not to worry about bills. The bills must be paid, the books must be balanced, and the council must not go broke. But the Conservatives think the council can magic £600,000 from nowhere. Perhaps they also think the council can magic the other £3 million or whatever of the deficit from nowhere as well. The last time our local Conservative councillors won a vote on anything was when they voted for Liz Truss as Prime Minister. And now we are all paying the price. We cannot allow the council's finances to follow the same disastrous route as our country's finances. The Liz Truss backing Conservatives have messed up our country's economy. Liz Truss's local supporters cannot be allowed to do the same with the council's ongoing financial viability. John Kaiser was right. He's still right. A broke council is no good to anyone.
Point of order. I would just like to ask.
Excuse me, what is your point of order first,
My
please?
point of order, I'd like.
No, sorry.
Sorry.
Can I have the...
It's an explanation, sorry. Personal explanation. Yes, I'd just like you to confirm that when you were talking about being rich enough to afford it, you were talking about that John and not this John. Thank you very much.
I'd like the point of order.
That's an explanation.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm not actually familiar with it.
Yeah, personally. Yeah. And it hasn't happened, has it? Okay, sorry. Your point of explanation I cannot accept because it's not part of an earlier speech. I think the speech.
Miss Smith, I don't understand. He's just accused me of having enough money to pay.
Sit down, please. Thank you. Whilst I take advisement. Thank you. Okay. Sorry, it has to be by an earlier speech by John Kaiser in this evening. Thank you. Can I now continue?
Madam
Thank
Mayor,
you.
Madam Mayor.
Sorry, no, please.
If it would
please,
help, I would like
sorry.
to apologise to John Kaiser for confusing him with the loaded people, the other John.
Thank you. Please sit down. I want to continue the meeting. Thank you. Right. Can I ask Councillor Gregor Murray to speak, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've worked in retail and manufacturing for over 25 years. During that time, I've worked for and advised some of the biggest retail chains and food manufacturers, both nationally and globally. I've managed stores and regions of stores, and I can tell you firsthand that footfall from customers is not a right. It's hard earned over many years, it has to be fought for, and it can be lost in the blink of an eye. Anything that can harm footfall must be avoided at all costs. By forcing through these draconian and punitive measures, you will shatter the hard-won footfall of our shops, restaurants, coffee shops and market traders at a time when they are still struggling to get back on their feet post-COVID and are struggling with the impact of inflation. These charges are nothing but a tax on shoppers and a tax on low-income workers our shops rely on to serve the customers that these charges will dramatically reduce. During my time on this council, our group repeatedly heard calls from officers to increase parking charges. The difference between the coalition and our group is that, led by John Halsall and John Kaiser, we told the officers no and to find savings elsewhere, which inevitably they did. As a suggestion, as Councillor Margetts has already said, there are currently 35 vacancies advertised on the council's website at an average of £32,500 each. That's savings of over £1 million just from freezing recruitment. If any coalition member votes for this parking charges, know this: any time you pass a newly empty shop, see a closing down sale, or hear a shop or restaurant worker complain about being short-staffed, know that you made that happen. You're voting for a tax on low-income shop workers and voting to close shops that are already struggling. Shame on you.
Thank you. Councillor Prue-Bray, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I understand why people have signed this petition. No one wants to have to pay more for parking, especially during a cost of living crisis. We don't want to put the charges up, but we don't have any choice. Now, as overview and scrutiny have been told in detail, we have a budget gap for next year of over £4 million. There are very few places to go to find the money, and car parking income is one of them. And that's why all the other local authorities around us are doing the same thing. Because it's better that than cutting meals for vulnerable children in the school holidays or cutting corners on children's social care. Staying with children's services, which is my portfolio, fostering and support for children with special educational needs are vital services which we must preserve. Were the people who signed the petition told what the choices were if parking did not go up? We have looked hard at everything. None of the possibilities are great. We are in a position where we have to make hard choices, and we are acting like grown-ups and making them. And meanwhile, what are the Conservatives doing? Along with freezing parking, they want us to pay for the green food waste bags that they didn't budget for. And they want us to find extra money to keep the number of blue sacks the same. Those three things alone add £1 million to next year's £4 million budget gap. Where do they think the money will come from? This is not the behaviour of a serious opposition. It's the behaviour of a party concerned only with their short-term electoral prospects, trying to fool people into voting for them by blaming others, which is a bad habit they seem to have caught from the Conservatives nationally, along, as Andy said, with Trussonomics. Unless I've missed something, they haven't actually promised to reverse an increase in car parking charges or to provide the green bags or more blue bags if they were in charge. They are making a lot of noise, but they are bereft of credible ideas as to how to fix the hole in the budget, which, can I remind you, is £4 million. And let us not forget that what we are working with is their budget and 3-year medium-term financial plan, not ours. One reason we are in this situation is because of what they did, or perhaps did not do, during their 20 years in charge. They were not prepared to make the tough decisions. Luckily, we are. We don't want to put up car parking charges, but if that's what it takes to protect the most vulnerable, then that's what has to be done.
Councillor Pauline Jorgensen, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, you're right. We did consider parking charge increases in 2021. And in fact, Councillor Fishwick at the time during the scrutiny meetings asked me to increase charges to ensure that people used buses. I remember it very well. But let me tell you some figures. During COVID, the revenue from car parking decreased from 2.180 million to 1.219 million. That's 40%. Figures the executive member at the time, executive member for Highways Transport during the call-in, didn't seem to have any recollection of at all. Only a Liberal Democrat would consider that increasing charges during COVID, when people were not using businesses and when both people and businesses were right on the edge of failing, would consider that would be a good idea. Absolutely ludicrous. Also, to the point about the park and ride, the land for the park and ride at Coppard Beach was set aside by the developer for a park and ride. We could use it, or we could, if you would have preferred, we could have let the developer take the land back and build on it, if that's what you would have preferred. As a result of the building, that everything has changed. People's use of buses has changed. People's ability to work from home has changed. And the use of park and rides has definitely changed. So a grown-up council would actually go and look at the park and rides and consider what else they should do with them, rather than slapping a charge on all the poor businesses and parkers that have got no choice but to use the car parks in the town centre. To turn to Andy's point, the reason we haven't committed to reversing the charges is actually we haven't got the business case, for starters. We haven't seen the figures. We don't actually believe some of the figures we have been told, because obviously the Liberals don't actually know the revenue figures for the car parks anyway, but that's an aside. Secondly, we haven't been asked. We are currently preparing an alternative budget, and I'll be quite keen to make sure that we do not increase the parking charges to the same extent that the Liberals are proposing, which will, I'm not committing until we finish the budget, but what I'm telling you is we will not increase car parking charges as you are doing. We will bring forward an alternative budget at the appropriate time, and you will see in that budget what we will do.
Thank you. Councillor Imogen Shepherd-Dupre, please.
Right. I'm very sure that the residents who signed this petition did so in good faith, but I am not so sure it was made clear to them at the time what the consequences of not increasing our car parking fees would be. It is very easy to see one side and say what you don't want to happen, but not so easy to find what must happen instead to replace that inaction. Even including these increases in car parking charges, this council is still facing an estimated £4.6 million deficit in our revenue budget for next year, and we need to find this by February. It will not be possible to plug this from our reserves, as they've already been significantly depleted. Over 80% of the income that we get is spent on services that we are legally required to provide. So if we do not cover this gap, and if we cannot show that we can turn it around, we will no longer be able to function as a council. This government will have to step in, all of our services will be cut, and our residents will be paying much more for just very basic services for years to follow. It is our paramount duty as human beings and as members of this council to protect the most vulnerable in our society. This would include children, disabled people, and those who cannot afford food or to stay warm this winter. Making the decisions to increase our charges is all part of making the responsible decisions to protect them first, as that is what we need these funds for. So with that in mind, we have been looking into increasing revenue and making savings in every area across this council, including staff numbers. And increasing these car parking fees is only just one part of the overall picture. That said, I am concerned for the businesses, and I've read the letters, who are worried about being affected by such things as increasing car parking charges. Sadly, as the Executive Member for Finance, I can only say that Wokingham Borough Council is certainly not in a financial position to act as a buffer for the effects of our economic crisis. If we could find a way to help, we would. But like everyone else, we are also struggling with inflation and the change in people's habits during COVID. However, when it comes to paying for car parking, we must remember that we all have choices. Residents could walk, cycle, take a bus, or even car share. We may not like these choices, but they are still choices that everyone can make. And many of us will already be sadly looking at what we must do to adjust to the new economy. And like it or not, we expect that these car parking increases will be primarily paid for by those who can still afford to run a car. And our parking charges are still cheaper than our neighbours. These problems are not unique to Wokingham Borough Council. All councils are still reporting similar financial concerns right now. And I will remind everyone that these financial problems are largely inherited from the previous administration, who plundered our reserves and left big problems in their wake. So finally, I should say, no councillor gets elected with the thought that they will have to make these difficult decisions. But I hope our residents will understand why we are doing this. It is because we have been left with no choice.
Thank you. Councillor Phil Cunnington, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Obviously, we've already discussed and heard about the increase in cost of living and how it's painfully squeezing disposable income in all but the wealthiest households in our borough. Those people who visit the town will have lost less in their pockets to spend should they visit. Or maybe they'll shop elsewhere where, contrary to what the previous speaker said, it's cheaper to park. If the Labour and Lib Dem coalition had bothered to consult retailers and other small businesses in Wokingham Town Centre, they would have heard how they have absorbed cost increases in many ways in order to keep their prices competitive. This, of course, has affected their profitability, but they need footfall and customers to maintain or improve their turnover just to stand still. They would also have heard from people working in those retailers, who I'm sure you all know are amongst the lowest paid workers in the borough. They would have heard from apprentice hairdressers who choose to work Sundays in Wokingham because the parking's free at the moment. The proposed charge for a day's parking on Sundays will take at least an hour's pay from them, and for the rest of the week it will over double their existing costs. With the rise of a monthly parking season ticket equivalent to a day's pay at apprenticeship rates. They would have heard that baristas working in Wokingham are already paying £4 a day to park, or £82 for a monthly season ticket, and how those charges will now over double, which means a minimum of additional £5 a day or £84 a month, when these workers on low hourly rates are already struggling to meet their own ever-rising bills. They would have heard from bar and waiting staff how their disposable income will be damaged disproportionately because they will now have to pay for car parking during the evening and on Sundays. Not the wealthy, the lower paid. They would have heard from parents for whom taking their child to the soft play centre is a treat that is about to become less frequent, with a knock-on effect on a young business establishing itself in an already difficult economic climate. Whilst collecting signatures for this petition, I even spoke with a lifelong Labour voter, Andy, there is one, that manages a retail premises, who said they would never consider supporting a Conservative initiative, but that this parking policy was so tone deaf to Wokingham Borough Council should make an exception in this case, and therefore they signed the petition. And another retailer said they're struggling to break even on Sundays because they stay open to help the town seem more vibrant. However, any less footfall in the town would mean they'd have to consider closing. It was their words that said the council's Sunday parking charges are like a closed for business sign on the gate of the town. The final insult is that rather than put a reasonable increase on the cost of parking, this Lib Dem and Labour coalition has decided to mete out a punishment on its residents and workers that is so disproportionate.
Excuse me, sorry, you've run out of time.
It's my last sentence.
Last sentence, okay.
That is so disproportionate, even 5 whole years of 10% inflation would have only seen around half the level of increase that the coalition has unleashed on the public.
Councillor Clive Jones, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I and all of my colleagues understand why residents have supported this petition, and I can speak for everyone in our group and say no one wants to put up car parking charges in Wokingham, and I don't know anyone who wants to do that. Some retailers have said that the car park charges will hurt their businesses. We very much hope that that will not happen. I have spoken to many retailers in Wokingham Town Centre. They are clear they don't like the car park charges increase, but they understand why we have to do it, because the council's finances, after being run by the Conservatives for so long, are not in a good place. And you can shake your head, Pauline, but you left a deficit of over £2 million, your group. Yes, you did.
No, we didn't.
Okay, we have to remember that the shortfall in car park revenue is between £600,000 and £800,000. This shortfall in revenue of between £600,000 and £800,000 can be blamed on the Conservatives, but it has to be found somewhere. It was your budget. But I have to say to the members opposite who say that we shouldn't increase car parking charges, that the consequences of the Conservative government's actions will be hurting our local businesses far more than increases in car park charges. And they should direct their attack on their own government. Madam Mayor, since the disastrous mini budget from Prime Minister Liz Truss, we have seen mortgages in Wokingham rise by up to £500 a month for the average house. That's an eye-watering £6,000 a year. £6,000 per household. £6,000 per household in the borough with a mortgage that can't now be spent in local retailers. You can try and make light of it, but you shouldn't do really. £500 a month, £6,000 a year. This will take many millions of pounds out of the local economy. On top of this, energy costs have doubled since last winter, adding for some households another £1,000 of costs. And the income tax thresholds frozen today until 2028. That's a tax increase of £600 for many people in Wokingham. Our local businesses
Sorry,
also...
Councillor Jones, you're out of time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Councillor Lauren Blumenthal, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Bray seemed to imply that free school meals on the holidays may be in jeopardy if car parking charges don't increase. But free school meals on the holidays come from the government's household support fund. So I hope this is an honest mistake and not misleading emotional blackmail.
Sorry, a genuine point of personal explanation, because it is in a speech that I made earlier, Madam Mayor, which is that part of the,
Point of order?
It's a point of personal explanation.
Okay, sorry.
It's a genuine point of personal explanation. Some of the funding that is going to pay for free school meals in the school holidays up until the May bank holiday, which we have announced, does not come from the government's fund because it only funds up till March. Thank you.
Thank you.
The press release said it was all going to be spent on highways.
Yeah.
Just going to find a point out. Can I just check, Laura, Lowenthal, you finished your speech? Sorry. Thank you. Andrew Mickleborough next, please, Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This week's Sunday Times newspaper included Jeremy Hunt's first newspaper interview since becoming Chancellor. I do not disagree with a single point reported in that interview. I also suggest that many of the Chancellor's points are extremely relevant to tonight's debate. First, quote, Margaret Thatcher said there's nothing moral about spending money you don't have, end of quote. I don't think I need to elaborate the clear resonance of this statement to tonight's debate, nor its enormous current importance. Second, the Chancellor said, we will put people ahead of ideology. You have to do what is right for the country and situation that we are in. I agree with the Chancellor. I always assume the best of everyone. But on the matter of car parking charges, recent behaviour makes me wonder if some opposition councillors have adopted their stance not from an informed and objective position of what would actually be most beneficial for our residents, but in the belief that they might score political points. Opposing new charges will inevitably gain some support, but it is not right for the situation our borough is currently in. Third, the Chancellor committed to giving people honesty about the problem and a plan to solve it. The ruling partnership is doing both with respect to all of the many challenges our borough faces. The Chancellor said the public don't expect us to be the popular party. They want us to be the party that when the going gets tough can be trusted. I appeal to the opposition to take the Chancellor's words on board and work constructively with the partnership at all times to help our residents during these extremely difficult times. That includes working together to agree and explain to residents when and why difficult policies must be implemented. Fourth, the Chancellor said that he will be fair in the way that I address those problems. Failure to have taken the decision to raise car parking charges would inevitably put even greater pressure on the council to cut services. In these very difficult times, when the number of residents facing financial and other stress is rising rapidly, and with very limited options to address this, residents who are most in need of our council's assistance would be harmed by these cuts. No councillor would wish this, but it would be an unavoidable outcome. To oppose the increase in parking charges would, with this knowledge, constitute willful blindness. In summary, I wish that we were in a position where we did not have to increase the car parking charges. However, we must be honest about the gravity of the situation facing us and the role that these charges play in our plans to manage the council's finances prudently and fairly. Difficult decisions have already been taken, and there will be many more ahead. I have appealed to the whole council to work together constructively to address these issues. Our residents expect and deserve nothing
Councillor
less.
Andrew, I'm sorry you're out of time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Councillor Chris Bowring next, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We appear to be agreed on one thing, and that is that this policy, which has become the premium policy of the Liberal Democrats, is a thoroughly bad policy. But their view is it's necessary, where ours is that it may not be. And I'm just wondering, looking at the budget deficit, what executive members have instructed the officers to do? Suppose the deficit were £3 million a year, what would they have done? I suspect they would say, find £3 million. That's it, you can go home, fine. It's £4 million, so fine, £4 million. I expect they'll be successful. Why don't you look for more money? This is the worst policy of the administration. Look for 4.5 million. It may be impossible, it may not be, but you should be trying to do it, because whatever cuts might be necessary, they're not going to be as bad as this policy. So I beg you to think again.
Thank you. Councillor Stephen Conway, please.
That was a quite remarkable intervention by Chris Bowring. Absolutely unbelievable. Do you not think we've been actually asking those questions? Do you not think we've been trying to find these savings anywhere we can? You are living, I'm afraid, in a fantasy world. Perhaps, Madam Mayor, we can return to the context in which the decision about car parking charges was taken. It's been said already, but it deserves re-emphasis. The financial crisis facing councils across the country is the severest anyone can remember. 1 in 6 councils is reckoned to be close to insolvency. 1 in 6. The government spending review, as the chair of the LGA puts it, and I quote him, comes at a time when the future financial sustainability of councils and local services is already on a cliff edge. Wokingham is particularly exposed as it receives one of the lowest levels of central government support in the country. Double-digit inflation, combined with rising demand for services, shortfalls in income anticipated in the February budget, and now, courtesy of Liz Truss, interest rates rises that make borrowing more expensive have combined to produce a perfect financial storm. There are no easy options left. None. To produce a balanced budget, we have no choice but to pursue unpalatable measures that we would much rather avoid. Increasing car parking charges comes in that category. The previous administration dipped into the reserves to balance February's budget. The then leader of council justified propping up current expenditure in this way by saying that the reserves were for a rainy day. If it was raining in February, we now face a torrential downpour. But we cannot emulate him and paper over the cracks with a further raid on the reserves, as that would put them close to the point where the government would appoint commissioners to take over the running of the council. That would lead, as it has done in Labour-controlled Slough and Conservative-controlled Thurrock, to deep cuts in services. None of us wants that. Debates of this kind give oppositions the chance to pose as champions of the public, but it would do no service to our residents if the council became insolvent and the government stepped in to balance the books by cutting services. So let's face up to reality, do our duty, however difficult it is. Hard choices have to be made. The consequences of not making them would be much more unpopular than increasing car parking charges.
Thank you, everybody. Councillor Baker. Oh, sorry. Norman Jorgensen. Sorry, I have 2 more. Councillor. Oh.
Having been mentioned in numerous speeches and much maligned tonight, I thought I'd have a word. I would remind the Liberals that we balanced the budget for over 20 years. Balancing the budget is part of your job. It's not part of our job. We're now in the opposition. We had 30 million of savings over the last 10 years. I have referred to you in the past as being financially illiterate, and I've heard tonight stuff which is really financially illiterate. It is a political choice to put up car parking charges. It's not a necessity, and it's not an economic choice. So you are making a political choice, and that speaks volumes about what your priorities are. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Norman Jorgensen, please.
Thank you very much. I'll just start with that same point that John's just made. I've heard tonight from the Liberal councillors that there is no choice. There is always a choice. They've chosen to increase these car parking charges. So it should be clear that was their choice. I think also the failing to take the wider view. What was presented to scrutiny, there was no assumption of a decrease in car parking in any of the car parks. In other words, very little impact was forecast in terms of business in the towns. That seems unlikely. People have a choice. They can go elsewhere, or they can stay at home, or they can shop online. So I think as a council, we need to take a wider view, not just of what car parking might raise by way of revenue, but what it might drive away. So if we lose businesses from the town centres, then we lose the rates that they pay. And in some cases, probably the rent that they pay us, because we own quite a lot of the properties that the businesses are in. So the financial impact of that could be quite considerable, and even more than the amounts we're talking about. So it would also lead to loss of jobs. So we're having people, unfortunately, who would lose their jobs. That will have an impact on those families. That will have an impact on us as a council. It will drive people to use our services more. So that would also lead to extra cost. We just look at the local example. When Reading Borough Council introduced on-street car parking charges around the university, people just disappeared. In that case, they were moving into residential streets round about, and they clogged up all the residential streets. But the impact was severe and overnight. So I sincerely hope that does not happen in this case, if you do go ahead and put up the charges. So again, I would implore you to think again the impact that this will have on our people in this area and on our businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for everybody for speaking. Councillor Baker. Oh,
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
sorry, I haven't quite finished.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. You have a right to reply. Do you wish to speak? You have 3 minutes. Thank you.
For most of this 1 hour, I thought I was transported to the House of Commons. So much talk about the government and the opposition. I'm more concerned about what happens to our residents, not what's happening to the government. Our residents are more important, and they are the ones who are going to be hit. Now, interestingly, a lot of the comments from the Liberals opposite are all about, if we don't increase car parking charges, we have to change, or we have to pinch it from essential services. We heard about children's services from Councillor Bray. Actually, no, you don't. Highways is not a sacrosanct budget. You can take money away from highways, not from essential services. And let me give you one example. Stop the park and rides. If you do that, you will make a saving. But you all believe, and you said it constantly, that the only way to satisfy the budget deficit is to put up car parking charges. Otherwise, we have to reduce essential services. That is totally and utterly wrong. Now, one of the big issues we have is there is no business case. If there is, you're keeping it secret. Now, as someone who was Highways executive member for 7 years, I know what a business case looks. And the business case, look at the previous ones, you'll see a business case looks at options. The options that they don't want to carry forward because they're irrelevant or they can't work, but they also look at consequences of an action. And none of you are looking at the consequences of an action. You seem to be in this fairy tale land that you can double car parking charges and it's going to have zero impact on usage of car parks. Better still, we're going to get even better use of car parks. We're going to get more people using it. What world do you live in? That is ludicrous. I can tell you the last time car parking charges were put up, only 10p on the 1 hour, there was a 15% drop in usage. That did not recover for 2 years. That is common sense. Anybody knows that. Now, the interesting thing, and picking up Councillor Jones, £500 a month. That's tough, isn't it? So I'll tell you what we'll do is we will add mortgages, £500 a month. What we'll do is we're going to double your car parking charges. So the workers, we've heard, are going to have to pay even more. The businesses are struggling. They're going to have to pay more. You do not seem to be sensitive at all to the impact on residents. Now, I'll finish, Madam Mayor, because I actually think Councillor Imogen de Grey actually let the cat out the bag or hinted at it.
Sorry, Councillor Baker, you are out of time, and I know, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, thank you. Oh, I know.
Pushing people to cycles and buses and away from cars.
Thank you. Oh, Councillor Bowring.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As you can see, several of my colleagues are standing. May I, under 4.2.15.5, ask for a recorded vote, please?
Okay. Okay, vote. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Baker. You're the proposer of the motion. Do you have a seconder?
Yes, I do.
Okay, thank you. And who is the seconder? Thank you. Okay, we will now go to the vote and it's recorded. Okay, thank you. Those in favour of the motion, please say. Or petition, sorry. Petition, motion. It's a recorded vote, yes. Names.
So for, against or abstention. Councillor Keith Baker.
For.
Councillor Rachel Bishop-Firth.
Against.
Councillor Laura Blumenthal.
For.
Councillor Chris Bowring.
For.
Councillor Shirley Boyt.
Against.
Councillor Prue Bray.
Against.
Councillor Rachel Burgess.
Against.
Councillor Anne Chadwick.
For.
Councillor Stephen Conway.
Against.
Councillor David Cornish.
Against.
Councillor Gary Cowan.
Against.
Councillor Andy Croy.
Against.
Councillor Phil Cunnington.
For.
Councillor David Davis.
For.
Councillor Peter Dennis.
Against.
Councillor Lindsay Ferris.
Against.
Councillor Michael Firmiger.
For.
Councillor Paul Fishwick.
Against.
Councillor Jim Fruin.
Abstain.
Councillor Maria G.
Against.
Councillor John Halsall. Councillor David Hare.
Against.
Councillor Peter Harper.
For.
Councillor Clive Jones.
Against.
Councillor Norman Jorgensen.
For.
Councillor Pauline Jorgensen.
For.
Councillor John Kaiser. Councillor Sarah Kerr.
Against.
Councillor Abdul Loys.
For.
Councillor Tahir Maher.
Against.
Councillor Morag Malvern.
Against.
Councillor Charles Magetts.
For.
Councillor Rebecca Magetts.
For.
Councillor Adrian Mather.
Against.
Councillor Andrew Micklebert.
Against.
Councillor Stuart Monroe.
For.
Councillor Gregor Murray.
For.
Councillor Alistair Neal.
Against.
Councillor Beth Rowland.
Against.
Councillor Ian Shenton.
Against.
Councillor Imogen Shepherd-Debay.
Against.
Councillor Rochelle Shepherd-Debay.
Against.
Councillor Caroline Smith.
Against.
Councillor Mike Smith.
Against.
Councillor Wayne Smith.
For.
Councillor Bill Soane.
For.
Councillor Alison Swaddle.
For.
Councillor Shahid Yunus.
4.
Thank you. The petition fails. Thank you very much. I'm now moving on to members' question time. We have 30 minutes, and I'd like to start with Councillor, Councillor Keith Baker.
I just wanted to ask the question on 3.5.4.2, section F. If the petition motion and any amended motion fall, the Mayor will then ask for further motions on how the council wishes to respond to the petition, which may include, and it gives some examples. You have not done that, Madam Mayor.
Sorry. Thank you for that. If the petition motion and any amended motion fall, the Mayor will then ask for further motions on how the council wishes to respond to the petition, which may include taking the action or some actions, the petition request, not taking the action of the petition request, or referring to the petition to another body for them to consider the matter and take the appropriate action. Councillor Pauline Jorgensen, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In view of the fact that this petition has not been approved, I would like to suggest that it is sent back to executive for reconsideration. A lot of businesses have said very clearly why this proposal as it stands is a problem to them. They've also, during the scrutiny meeting, gave some sensible mitigations to some of the worst impacts. Residents have said very clearly why it's a problem and why this shouldn't be done. And also the impact of the changes obviously was not taken into account. Even at scrutiny, we found that the assumptions were that there would be no change in revenue despite these swinging increases in charges. So I would like to propose that this position is sent back to executive and that executive consider the feedback from residents, the feedback from businesses, and also options and the impact assessment of increasing the charges and what that will actually do to revenue in order to come up with a more thought through proposal. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Pauline Jorgensen, do you have a seconder, please? Riddle Murray, thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Sorry, Councillor Clive Jones.
we can add it to the executive meeting next Thursday. That should be okay.
Could I thank Clive for that and hope that we come up with a sensible solution?
There is already an item in there, matters for consideration. I think it comes under that.
Asking for advisement. Thank you.
There's an item 66 on the executive agenda next week is already matters referred to the executive, so there is already a hook to hang it on.
Thank you. I just need to ask everybody to vote that they are happy with the motion going to the executive next Thursday. All those in favour? Thank you. Okay, now we're moving on to members' question. I would like to invite Shirley Boyd to ask the question of the executive member for active travel, transport and highways.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The park and ride on Thames Valley Park is an expensive white elephant. And worse, it attracts ASB in the form of illegal car meets. The likelihood of the MRT rearing its head again is extremely unlikely in the post-COVID environment where far fewer work-related journeys are being made. The car park should be put to an alternative use, and I would suggest turning it into a solar farm. Please can officers be instructed to carry out a feasibility study into this at the earliest opportunity. And I'd like to add, from what we've heard tonight about the Coppid Beach Park and Ride, perhaps they could look into turning that one into a solar farm as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Shirley, for your question. Thames Valley Park and Ride is currently being used by the hospital as a park and ride for staff operating between Thames Valley Park, Royal Berkshire Hospital and the Mere Oak Park and Ride site. Income from the hospital will allow the site to break even under the current arrangement. Discussions are taking place to grow this use further next year. We are continually reviewing options for encouraging greater use or increasing revenue to ensure that the site is not costing the council any money. The site could have the potential for some renewable energy generation, which could include solar, but this would be subject to detailed feasibility assessment and funding availability. And the Coppid Beach Park and Ride, as I said, we are looking at potential options, as I said in my previous question. Thank you.
Sorry, are you saying then that there will be a feasibility study into the park and ride on Thames Valley Park?
As I said before, in my response, we're currently in arrangement with the hospital and it's breaking even. We are looking at expanding that, which hopefully will bring more money.
Sorry, Councillor Fishwick. Councillor Pauline Jorgensen, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Under item 4.2.13.16, please could I ask the appropriate officer where the revenue from Thames Valley, from the NHS is appearing in the budget and whether it was considered in this call-in, because I think I recall from the call-in that we were told there was hardly any revenue in that park and ride, and it sounds like that was incorrect.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I can answer that. As I said at the call-in, I did not mention the Thames Valley Park and Ride. I mentioned Coppid Beach, I mentioned Mere Oak, and I mentioned Winner's Triangle. We are breaking even.
Sorry, Councillor Fishwick.
Thames Valley Park.
Councillor Pauline Jorgensen.
Sorry, could I have an answer from an officer that tells me where the revenue has gone, please?
It's gone on to the...
Councillor Fishwick, please sit down whilst I take advisement. Thank you. Councillor Pauline Jorgensen, we will get a written response to you from the officer in question. Okay?
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Sorry, Councillor Fishwick, please continue. Thank you. Sorry about that.
The funding goes on to the same budget line for car parking services and the park and ride. That's where it goes.
Thank you. Councillor Sam Akhtar to ask a question of the Executive Member for Climate Emergency and Resident Services.
He's not here, but I'm quite happy to read out the answer. That's okay?
That's fine. Thank you.
Okay, so he asked what steps has the council taken to reduce the carbon footprint of council properties? And the response is, as stated in our Climate Emergency Action Plan, the council aims to retrofit to carbon neutral standards all council commercial buildings. We are taking a fabric first approach whereby we aim to reduce energy consumption on each site as much as possible through a wide range of energy efficiency improvements. We then aim to move towards energy self-sufficiency through on-site generation of renewable energy, such as solar panels. This is not only better from a carbon reduction point of view, but it reduces our ongoing costs and provides energy security. At present, around 15% of our buildings have been retrofitted to carbon neutral standards. There is money allocated for some of these works within our current capital programme, but the future implementation programme for our whole estate will be subject to the availability of funding in future years. With regards to our social housing, the council aims for all houses to have an Energy Performance Certificate, EPC, Type C by 2025, 5 years ahead of the government target of 2030. The first tranche of an EPC stock survey has been undertaken this year. We have around 2,600 properties and we're able to access and survey around 80% of them in the first tranche. The information we've received so far indicates that over 2,200 properties already have an EPC Type C, around 350 have an EPC Type D, and 5 have an EPC Type E or F. For the Type E and F properties, these are already being retrofitted to bring them up to EPCC. For the Type D properties, we are aiming to fund and deliver some of the improvements through the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund, which we're in the process of applying for this month through the Department for Base. In short, we have a plan and we've identified potential funding sources for that plan. Our plan could be even more ambitious, though, if government was prepared to further invest. Not only would it help with carbon reduction, but would significantly help with cost of living crisis and provide energy security. And I'm hoping that everyone here will help us lobby the government on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Adrian Mather to ask a question, Executive Member for Active Travel, Transport and Highways. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On the 1st of October, a Thames Water lorry fell into a sinkhole caused by a collapsed sewer in Evandens Lane. This has caused significant disruption to the residents of the whole area. In addition, Evandens School, teachers, pupils, parents and carers have been disrupted. This is not the first time a Thames Water lorry has fallen into a sinkhole. In November 2021, a similar lorry fell into another sinkhole in Elmsfield for the same reasons. I understand that the Elmsfield situation is still not fully resolved by Thames Water. Please can the Executive Member for Highways and Active Travel confirm that Thames Water is doing all that it can to resolve the disruption in Evandens Lane?
Thank you, Adrian, for your question. The work to repair the collapsed sewer, which caused the sinkhole, is ongoing and difficult due to the ground conditions of Evandens Lane and the depth of the sewer, 4.3 metres down. The first excavation only found remnants of the sewer, so a second deep excavation is required, but to do this safely, the groundwater level needs to be reduced so that the sides of the excavation do not collapse and cause more damage to the surrounding area. To achieve this, Thames Water have sunk 16 individual boreholes and hope now to commence digging the second excavation and then to commence the repairs to the sewer. Thames Water are working on site 7 days a week to complete the repairs as quickly as possible, and the Council Streetworks team are having weekly progress meetings as well as regular on-site meetings to make sure progress continues positively. Wokingham Borough Council and Thames Water continue to liaise with Evandens Primary School and are working to ensure that the community is fully informed by direct communication and via social media channels.
Thank you. Councillor Mather, do you have a supplementary?
I do, actually. I regard this as a maintenance issue. Can the member for Highways and Active Travel request that a survey be done by Thames Water of the sewers in Wokingham area so that we don't get a third lorry falling down another sinkhole?
It's not our apparatus, it's Thames Water's. Thames Water are a private company. We can ask the question, but I don't know what answer we'll get.
Thank you. Councillor Gary Cowan to ask his question, the Executive Member for Planning and Local Plan. Thank you.
Thank you. What is the meaning of the term on balance used by the Borough Council's planning officers regularly at planning committee meetings? Thank you.
Thank you, Gary, for your question. Planning law requires that applications for planning permission be determined in accordance with the development plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise. The term balance is shorthand for this requirement, simply reflecting that the decision maker must consider how a proposed development sits with regard to the development plan and then proceed to consider other material factors, both adverse impacts and any benefits that might arise. Officers will often use the term on balance before concluding their analysis.
Thank you. Councillor Gary Cowan, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Under the council's constitution, members are instructed when making decisions they must only consider planning merits and exercise their judgment solely based on planning merits, yet this does not appear to apply to planning officers in these cases. There are many examples of this, but it's not just slight variations, as the following example will show when officers were recommending a planning application using the on balance words, said that the proposal is considered to not fully accord with the development plan due to the conflict with countryside policies. However, on balance, the scheme is recommended for approval as the harm to the rural character and the impact of the designated countryside is considered to be outweighed by the special circumstances and needs of the applicant. And the question is, does such a system which ties with the planning committees, ties the hands of the planning committee members and ward members behind their backs, at the same time, it also gives planning officers a free hand, imply that the council planning department is not fit for purpose?
What I can say is from my time on the planning committee a few years ago, where we had a number of planning applications which included on balance. And what it did at that time is allowed the members of the planning committee to decide whether they should accept that planning position or not. And I remember on a number of occasions we actually refused a planning application where on balance was used. I'm not sure if there's been changes since I was on the planning committee, but I'll come back to you if there are anything further.
Thank you. Councillor Keith Baker to ask a question, the Executive Member for Active Travel, Transport and Highways. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. What has exacerbated the higher increase is that there hasn't been an increase in car parking charges in Wokingham for nearly 5 years. Had there been then, the increase would not have been such a shock, said Councillor Fishwick in his From the Chamber article in the Wokingham Today paper excuse me, on 27th of October. This mantra has been repeated many times by Councillor Fishwick and others at meetings, the press and social media. Now, using the Bank of England inflation calculator, applying a cumulative inflation from 2018 until September 2022, you get this data. 1 hour should be 97p, you're 130. 2 hours, £1.45, 2.50. 4 hours, £2.34, £4.50. 6 hours, £3.51, 6.50. Over 6 hours, £4.67, and you're charging £9. It is clear from this chart that the actual inflation adjusted charges are significantly lower than the charges the Liberal Democrat executive are imposing on our residents and businesses. Clearly, your statement about the regular increase not being such a shock is totally wrong. Could you explain how you've got this so dramatically wrong?
Thank you, Keith, for your question. Point of clarification, the figures that you have quoted are for Wokingham Town and not outside of Wokingham, as Woodley, for example, has a lower charge. The cost of the parking service is around 2.5 million. The council needs to cover the cost of the service by raising revenue funding that will come from parking fees, and any shortfall will need to come from other revenue raised, including through council tax. Simple increase over the past years in line with inflation will not be which has not been done, will not cover the costs of operation. Therefore, the service must cover its own costs. The council finds itself under the severest of financial pressures, as do most other local authorities, and must look at all aspects to balance the books, which includes parking charges above standard inflation rates. Without these increases, essential services would need to be cut, and we are trying to find ways to protect the most vulnerable in our community. If the previous administration had raised the car parking charges along the lines that it proposed, to the Community and Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee on the 24th of November 2021 and looking to raise around 500,000 in this financial year. That would have helped towards covering the majority of the financial hole in the car parking budget that we now have.
Thank you. Councillor Baker, do you have a supplementary?
Surprisingly, I do. You have stated, Councillor Fishwick, that these increased charges would be similar to neighbouring areas who have increased their charges every year and are competitive. There is a new shopping centre in Bracknell called the Lexicon. This complex is massive. Wokingham has nothing remotely like this. The Lexicon runs the car park associated with this complex called Princess Square. Would it surprise you to know that the charges at Princess Square are all lower than the new charges in the borough, ranging from 25% to 80% cheaper? For example, 1 hour would be £1, not £1.30. 2 hours, £2, not £2.50. 3 hours, £3, not £4.50. Can you explain why would anyone go to Wokingham Town Centre when they could go to the Lexicon and pay significantly smaller car parking charges?
The Lexicon shopping centre in Bracknell, as you said, is Princess Square, and that's a private area, so it covers its own costs in whatever way it needs to do. We need to cover the costs of the service of the car parking and park and rides on our budget line. That's what we need to cover.
Thank you. Councillor Abdul Loys to ask a question, the Executive Member of Equalities, Inclusion and Fighting Poverty.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. How has the council ensured that everyone entitled to the £150 rebate to help with the cost of energy bills received it before the September's deadline?
Thank you for your question, Abdul. There have been 2 council tax energy rebate schemes. The first was for those who live in property in bands A to D. This is a scheme which initially ended on the 30th of September 2022. The government has now allowed an extension of this until the 30th of November, but Woking Borough Council made all its payments to everybody who was on our records as being eligible for the scheme by the 30th of September deadline. There is another scheme for discretionary payments, which ends at the end of this month, but I'm assuming that you're asking here about the Band A to D scheme. Woking Borough Council made over 36,000 payments for residents via the scheme for those living in properties banded A to D. In the majority of cases, these payments were made directly into the bank accounts of those who pay their council tax by direct debit, as this is the quickest and simplest way of getting the money to them. Where the council taxpayer doesn't pay by direct debit, we had to get proof of identity and bank details so that we could make the payment. To reach these residents, we sent leaflets to 9,000 eligible households, as well as publicising this extensively on both social and traditional media. Because of this, we were able to make payments to a further 4,184 people. Where we were still unable to reach people despite these efforts, we directly credited the £150 payment to the council tax account and issued revised bills. We have made council tax credits to 4,636 households. This was not our preferred way of getting the money to residents, as it's faster to get them the money via transfer of funds, and so it was our last resort where we were unable to meet residents to reach residents in other ways. This means that everyone who was on Woking Borough Council's records as being eligible for the payment has now been paid the money.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Right. Do you have a figure of how many people has, without the direct debit system, how many number of residents you've been paying?
Yes, we do. So there were, it was paid in two payments to two different groups of people. First of all, those we were able to reach, that's 4,184 people. Those which we were unable to reach and we paid by, we had to pay direct into the council tax accounts, that was 4,636 people.
Thank you. Councillor Alison Swaddle to ask a question of the Leader of the Council.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So my question is to Councillor Jones. Residents in my ward are concerned about the increases in the cost of off-street parking. Does the Leader of the Council agree that the following statement should apply to the policies of his council? Trust individuals to make their own decisions about how they live their lives.
Thank you for your question, Alison. The answer is yes.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary?
I do. That is a quote from the Liberal Democrat publication in 2021 entitled, What Liberal Democrats Believe. Councillor Jones, how do you square that with the council's policy of discouraging inappropriate car journeys, as described in the September executive report on off-street car park charges? And why is the council better placed to make this judgment rather than our residents, who have felt their budgets squeezed, including when filling up their cars?
Thank you for your supplementary, Alison. Car parking charges haven't gone up for the last 5 years in Wokingham. They weren't put up in 2018, 19 or 20. They clearly weren't going to go up in the COVID years. We have got to do something about our deficit of £600,000 to £800,000 in the car parking budget.
Thank you. Councillor Laura Blomenthal to ask a question, the Executive Member for Housing.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is, can you let us know how much has Council spent on emergency accommodation in the last year?
Thank you for your question, Laura. The final spend out turn for 2021-22 was £975,000, as compared with the projected spend of £1.2 million at the start of the year. To contain the spend is a major achievement of our very committed housing team, which was able to finalise the lease of Crown House, to expand our temporary accommodation, and otherwise manage the pressure on emergency costs. Their work has led to a fall in the number of people in emergency bed and breakfast accommodation from 47 at the start of the year to 25 now.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary?
I do. Thank you for your response. It is a huge figure. And in light of that, I wanted to know if you think it's wise that your administration is exploring cutting the majority of borough news issues to residents. This is the publication that goes to all households in the borough and frequently tells people about how to get support when they're struggling and can potentially prevent people falling deeper into crises. And it's all for the sake of saving just £30,000 a year.
I'm slightly puzzled as to how you make a connection between the emergency accommodation costs and the council's borough news. I still haven't quite actually got how that is connected. The borough news is read by many people who are in very little, if any, danger of requiring emergency accommodation. We do need to find savings. This has been a theme throughout the evening. We do need to find savings, and if that requires us to reduce the number of issues of the borough news, we will have to think about doing that. No decision has been made on that, but that is something we have to contemplate.
Thank you. Councillor Pauline Jorgensen to ask a question, the Executive Member for Active, oh no, wrong one, sorry, Deputy Leader of the Council and Executive Member for Housing, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It would have been interesting to see what the Executive Member for Active Travel had said in response. Nationally, the Liberal Democrat Party has pledged to build 300,000 houses per year, the same amount as the government. Why should residents believe the administration will be able to reduce the numbers of houses as they've made no progress so far?
Thank you very much for your question, Pauline. It's very good to be able to try and answer it for you. All political parties recognise there is a national housing crisis and support significant house building to address it. The crucial matter for consideration here is where and how those new homes should be delivered. The government's current method to calculate where housing should be built is, in my opinion, flawed. There is no consideration as to where housing could best be delivered to support the levelling up of opportunity for northern communities that are crying out for investment. There is no consideration of what the environmental impact or infrastructure consequences might be for an area such as ours. There is no consideration of the level of change communities have experienced in the recent past. I know that the previous administration here in Woking, of which you remember, lobbied for a reduction in the housing allocation for the borough without success. But there are good reasons to make a renewed effort now. Our own lobbying efforts, it has to be said, have been hampered by the rapid turnover of secretaries of state in a period of chaos and dysfunction at national government level. But I believe that the government, now we seem to have a permanent government, has started to understand, with the newly restored Secretary of State, Michael Gove, recently referring to the need for a fairer way of allocating housing that takes account of changes in population. He has also acknowledged that some of the, are you listening, Pauline? I thought you wanted an answer. He has also acknowledged that some of the calculations that have been made in the past have been wrong. In this context, it's imperative that we continue to raise our residents' concerns over the scale of housing at the borough required by the government. I would hope that members of all political parties would support our efforts as we supported yours.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Stephen, for that. I completely agree with you. And I would like to offer the support of the Conservative group, as you did with us when we were, unlike Labour, when we were trying to get the numbers reduced, and actually successfully, thanks to our leader, did get the numbers reduced. And we would be very happy to come with you and lobby government ministers. I've already talked to all the MPs in the area, and I would be very happy to join you. Would you be happy to have our support?
I'd be delighted to have your support, Pauline. We have been asking for a constructive engagement with the opposition. And if you're prepared to help us on this, I'm sure that help will be gratefully received.
Thank you. Councillor Chris Bowring, please, to ask.
So, Madam Mayor, Standing Order 4112M, can we extend the meeting for 30 minutes past 10:30 p.m.
Do you have
please?
a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Conway.
I thought the constitution was changed last, because I remember I argued that if it was going to automatically happen, you just go straight ahead. So surely it did change.
I'll take advice.
I'm afraid you voted against that one, I think. Yeah, it didn't go through. Yeah, that's on recollection.
Sorry, we're just checking. Thank you.
That is the advice we've received. So I'm quite happy if we don't have to do it anymore.
Sorry, we're going to look into it, but for this evening's, we are just going to vote to stay.
Can I second that proposal?
Thank you. Who'd like to? Thank you. We'd like to vote to extend the meeting by 30 minutes. Thank you. Carried. Thank you. Councillor Chris Bowring to ask the question to the Executive Member for Active Travel, Transport and Highways.
Thank you very much. Woking Without Parish Council members and the police strongly agree that the current speed limit on Honey Hill in Woking Without Ward are excessive and dangerous to road users, including pedestrians. Would the executive member be willing to attend a site visit with local borough and parish councillors to apprise him of the perceived problems?
Thank you, Chris, for your question. As you may be aware, the council's traffic management team have been involved in discussions regarding Honey Hill for some time now. We are deeply surprised at the comment you have made regarding the statement, "The police strongly agree that the current speed limits on Honey Hill in Wokingham Without Ward are excessive and dangerous to road users, including pedestrians. And we would welcome seeing any correspondence you have from the police advising of this. As you are aware, the enforcement of traffic speed is a police function. At present, there is no evidence by way of speeding of personal injury accidents that would indicate that there is a speeding or safety issue on this road. However, I am happy to meet local ward and parish councillors on site."
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, thank you very much. I understand that at Church Lane in Shinfield, the speed limit was reduced to 60 to 30 in anticipation of a growth in traffic from the SDL housing. Actually, before it happened, and we probably have a similar situation in Honey Hill with the south of Wokingham 1,800 houses yet to be built. Would you take that into account when you arrive at your final decision, please? And thank you for agreeing with the site visit.
Yes, I certainly will. Thank you.
Okay, I'm very sorry. I've run out of time. I know. I'm just. I know. I would love. I would, but it's 10:05 now, and we still got quite a lot of business to get through. Okay, if everybody's happy, we'll take one more. No, just the one more. Okay. I'm going to take any more offers. We'll go for 2 more questions. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. My question is to the Leader of the Council. The Conservatives are trying to disenfranchise many people in the borough by making it harder to vote. The ID restrictions and allowable IDs have been described as worse than voter suppression measures seen in parts of the United States. What steps will Wokingham Borough Council be taking to ensure not a single resident is deterred from exercising their democratic right to vote the next time they want to go to the polling station?
Thank you very much for your question, Andy. I agree with you that we need to take every step to ensure that residents are informed of this new requirement and are not deterred from voting. I think it's very sad that the government are forcing these changes upon us. We therefore have to make this work as best that we can. We are already publicising these changes on the council's website in advance of the Electoral Commission's national publicity campaign that will start in January 2023. The voter ID provisions are due to be in place for local elections in England in May 23 and at any UK parliamentary election held after that date. The types of ID to be allowed are set out in the Elections Act 2022 and include passports, photographic driving licence, biometric immigration documents and some concessionary travel passes. 3 voter cards, to be called a voter authority certificate, will be made available for those without any other form of photographic ID. People are likely to be able to apply for these from January 2023. I would have liked to have seen ID used by younger people to be also accepted. Officers are working closely with the Electoral Commission to ensure a successful implementation of this new requirement and to mitigate the risk of any voter in Wokingham Borough being disenfranchised. But it would be better if we didn't have to do this.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary?
I do. Thank you very much. I am sure that none of our local Conservatives would support this rather Trumpian attempt to interfere with a hard-won democratic right to vote. So, Clive, would you consider writing a letter from all the group leaders to all of the borough's MPs to make clear that every single one of us here supports democracy and is opposed to the introduction of mandatory voter IDs?
Thank you. Councillor Charles Baguettes to ask the question.
I think I've got to answer the supplementary.
Sorry.
I would be delighted to write such a letter. Hopefully the party leaders, if I look at Jim, I think you would support that. Rachel, you would support it. Pauline, would you support that? No. Okay.
Can I just say something?
Sorry.
I've been asked a direct question. Can I answer the direct question, or am I not allowed to answer questions? I was born and brought up in Northern Ireland, where there is an enormous amount of voter impersonation and people voting, as they say, vote often. Yeah, I think actually making people identify themselves is absolutely right.
Councillor Pauline, thank you.
I wasn't aware that members were allowed to just chip in the course of debates when they fancied it. If I'd realised that, I would have chipped in several times before now.
Thank
myself.
you. Are you allowed to ask me questions then?
Sorry, can we get back to the questions, please? Thank you. Councillor Charles Baguettes, would you like to ask your question? The Executive Member for Active Travel, Transport and Highways.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's a question to Paul, basically, and it's not about car parking charges. The previous Conservative administration had allocated £20 million some years ago into an anti-congestion budget. The purpose of this was to improve vehicle flow through key road bottlenecks to ease congestion. My understanding is that officers worked up a scheme to improve traffic flow on London Road and were planning to move on to several other schemes in the borough. It's my understanding that £12 million was unallocated at the time of the May election and available for this work. Officers have advised me that this budget has been renamed the Active Travel Budget. Can you tell me which of the original schemes planned at the time of the local election in May are still progressing, and any new active travel schemes which have now been incorporated into this programme?
Thank you, Charles, for your question. Whilst 20 million may have been allocated by the previous Conservative administration, the money is not available without furthering the council's borrowings. As such, the value being referenced is not available, and a significantly lesser amount is now being worked with under the new heading Active Travel and Bus Priority. Schemes that had previously been identified and which we believe will serve the best benefit to all users of the highway network is by targeting the Department of Transport's own findings that nearly 60% of short journeys are taken by car and could be taken by active travel, walking and cycling. Linking to this, Council's emerging local cycling and walking infrastructure plan, or public transport, bus and rail, linking with this Council's bus service improvement plan, which is currently being amended. With a good standard of infrastructure in place, many of these short journeys can be transferred from the car, leaving spare capacity on the network for essential journeys such as freight, as well as car that cannot be transferred to active travel or public transport. However, some schemes can be revised and converted to active travel and bus priority, and these include the likes of the active travel walking and cycling along London Road between Binfield Road and Seaford Road junctions, and also active travel and bus priority measures at Binfield Road junction with improvements to the signals. Measures are also being considered at Winner's Crossroads with signal optimisation scheme to reflect the new traffic patterns as a result of the Winner's Relief Road. These measures could also include bus priority and improved pedestrian and cycle connectivity. As highlighted already tonight, the council finds itself under the severest of financial pressures and do most other
Sorry,
local...
Councillor Fishwick, I'm sorry, you're
Okay.
out of time. Thank you. Do you have a supplementary?
Thank you, Paul, for that answer. I have a couple of brief questions. You mentioned a differing amount to the amount I quoted, and I wonder if you could clarify what that amount was. You mentioned some schemes, basically, which were moving forward. You mentioned schemes which were moving forward. One at Twyford Crossroads was one I was told by an officer in June was being considered. Is that one? And when can we expect a formal announcement on this?
As I said previously, the amount of money which you thought was available isn't, because that is furthering borrowing on the capital budget, which we cannot afford. Therefore, there is a smaller amount in the active travel and bus priority, which is currently going through the MTFP iterations. On Twyford Crossroads, I'll come back to you on that because I just gave you a flavour of some schemes which we've got currently in the programme.
Thank you. I'm sorry we've run out of time for the last question, but Councillor.
I've got some advisement for you regarding the question about the automatic and so 4.2.8 duration of meeting in the case of ordinary council and special council executive committee meetings, if it has not concluded after 3 hours from the start of the meeting and business on the agenda remains outstanding, the meeting will automatically be extended by a further 30 minutes, which is what I thought it was.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Cunnington, are you quite happy for a written response to your question? Thank you. Okay, and now moving on to minutes of committee meetings and ward matters. Can I have a show of hands for those who'd like to ask a question? Thank you. Maria's hand.
Yeah, I've got one.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. Oh, hands down. Thank you, Councillor Gregor Murray. Please, your question.
My question is to Councillor Fishwick. Earlier this evening, when Councillor Baker referenced inflationary increases to parking charges, you responded that Councillor Baker was referring to Wokingham, not Woodley, which will see a lower increase.
Sorry,
Point of order. This is not a ward question.
It actually is a ward question, if you'll just give me a chance to ask it.
Sorry, can I have the ward question to start with? Because it sounds like it's a borough-wide thing.
Oh, you absolutely can have the ward question. I'll ask it right now. Other than for reasons of coalition political expediency, why should residents of Woodley pay less to park in their town centre than residents of Norreys will pay to park in Wokingham?
Madam Mayor, that is not a ward question. Woodley.
It is. I'm asking why residents of Norreys will pay more to park in their town centre than residents of Woodley.
Please. Thank you. Thank you. I understand on 4.2.10.9, it has to be a Pacific ward question, not a borough-wide question.
It is a ward question. I'm asking why residents of Norreys have to pay more to park in their town centre than residents of Woodley do.
Sorry, no, I'm going to move on. Thank you. Can I have Councillor Keith Baker, please, your ward question?
It isn't a ward question, but it's a question on minutes of committee meetings, which is allowed. All right.
Yeah.
At the overview and scrutiny call-in, which was minuted, we were told that the official consultation on the increase of car parking charges will be the traffic regulation order. I have asked when this TRO will be published and promoted to our residents so they are aware that they can comment. As of now, I have not had any suggested dates from officers. With the Christmas period coming up, when residents are not particularly interested in carrying out responses to consultations, I fear for the value of such a consultation. Bearing in mind there is a window of 28 days to comment, it would be unfortunate if that period includes the Christmas break. I'm assuming that you will want to complete this final consultation and get the new charges implemented. So I'd expect you would have some idea as to a target date, not the actual date, but as a target date for the TRO publication. So could you possibly let councillors know what that might be? Also, it is essential that residents are aware of this consultation. So can you tell me what plans you have to promote this TRO on social media? Thank you.
Our target date is next week, the end of next week, and there will be communications to the media and on social media and our website next week.
Thank you. Councillor Maria G, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a question for the Executive Member for Children's Services. There's a school in my ward now with the trust of Chiltern Way Academy, and in previous years it has been a failing school, and I'm interested in hearing of any progress with the change of trustee board. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. It was a failing school, and Councillor Mickleborough and I were a part of the emergency board that tried to keep it going and succeeded until Chiltern Way came along and took it over. It has been my very great pleasure to go and visit the school quite recently, and it is transformed. They are doing a really good job. They've had people from the Office of the School Regional Schools Commissioner visit them as well. Everybody is delighted with the progress. What I saw was a completely different environment to what was there before, and I'm really looking forward to us being able to work with them for the benefit of all our children. They've got a nearly full school. All the children are in school. Their attendance record has shot up. They're doing qualifications now, which they weren't doing before. It is really showing great signs of improvement. I was really pleased to see it.
Thank you. Councillor Kaiser, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to ask the Executive Member responsible for highways. There is a lake which has become a permanent feature on the corner of Langley Common Road, and I think it may be part in Gary's ward, and Eversley Road. It is very dangerous. We haven't had any ice yet, but if we do, it's going to become even more dangerous. Could you please get it sorted out? Thank you. The number of lakes are growing by the sound of things. Yes, we are aware of that, and I'll do my utmost to get that sorted out as quickly as possible. And I do understand the concerns you have, particularly with cold weather coming. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Halsall, please.
Sorry. The coalition undertook to protect the Greenbelt in May 2022. Can you confirm this is still true and there are no discussions being held by officers or members which would make this untrue?
Thank you for your question, John. I seem to recall when I asked a similar question of you when we were in opposition and you were running the council, you replied quite correctly that it was not appropriate to say anything that would prejudge a process that is complicated and involves many parties, and it is imperative that we bear in mind that when the local plan comes forward for the inquiry in public, no opportunity has been given to any developer to say that their proposals were not treated fairly. So that is the position you outlined when you were leader of the council, and it's the position.
Sorry, I never made that undertaking. You did in May 22.
John, you explained the situation when you were the leader of the council. I'm explaining the situation now. I'm not the leader of the council, but you, for some reason, have asked me this question. You seem to assume that I'm responsible for the local plan, which is flattering but wrong. Just as Pauline seems to assume I'm responsible for the local plan, my colleague Lindsay Ferris is responsible for the local plan. I'm responsible for affordable and social housing. But I'm very happy to try and answer your question.
Well, you didn't.
Thank you.
No more than you answered mine.
Thank you. Councillor Charles McGetts, please.
Well timed line.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I had a question for Paul about California Crossroads. At the last council meeting, my colleague Peter Harper asked you whether you would consider running the consultation again, last done in 2018-2019. We've had quite a bit of correspondence from some of the traders at California Crossroads since then. The dentist, who wasn't even in Finch Hampstead then, I was completely unaware of these changes and the council have not communicated them or consulted with me. Cresswell's Garage, we had a visit from an officer in March with a new and revised plan asking to buy land. We've heard nothing since. The owners of the convenience store and fish and chip shops, I had no idea this was progressing. I've had no contact from the council. They've not asked my opinion. The co-op, basically, this is the first time we've ever heard about this scheme. It's of no benefit to the area and we've not been consulted. I realised basically this was before your time, basically, that this scheme was proposed. And I realised that you basically had nothing to do with the development of it. But it was a request, basically, that many things have changed since 2018-19. Would you consider these facts, basically, and possibly consider another consultation to make sure that the scheme that does go ahead reflects the views of the world in 2022, not the views of the world in 2018-19?
Thank you for your question. Yes, it was some time ago that the consultations were undertaken, and on the back of those consultations, detailed designs have been undertaken and completed. A lot of money's already been spent, and I do not want to go down that road of opening it up and having redesigns done. We're now going out to tender for the works, and everything is now finalised. So that's where it stands.
Thank you. Councillor Laura Blumenthal, please.
Thank you. I've also got a question for the Executive Member for Highways. You may remember the last full council meeting I asked you about the council's consultation, which included potential proposals to remove the roundabouts on Nightingale Road in Wood. To know when the outcome of that consultation will be published so they know if the council does plan to remove the roundabouts or not.
That was all part of the LC Whip consultation. They were high-level ideas. They are not concrete at all. We are currently analysing all of the results that have come in. There's a large number. There's going to be a report going to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee on the 29th of November, which I believe you sit on. So you'll get some information there. Once we've then gone through that, we'll then go for adoption of the LC Whip with prioritisation of the main routes, which we'll then be bidding on. And if Nightingale Road is one of those, then we'll go out to consultation again on a design for that particular road.
Are there any more questions? Oh, sorry. Councillor Phil Cunnington, please.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Paul, but this is also to the Executive Member for Active Travel. There is two particular crossings that have been requested multiple times over the years that I've been involved in campaigning before even I was elected. One across Warren House Road, which joins the Mulberry View estate into Ashridge, and one on Keep Hatch Road, which joins the Dowles Green estate into the Ashridge area. Both of these are estates which have been built outside of the main hub of Ashridge, but both of those contain numbers of children that travel to school every day in the centre of Ashridge. And particularly those two areas are highly dangerous to cross because of the fact that there are bends and it's difficult to see the cars. Could you please confirm to me, I don't mind if you do this later, that those crossings are still on the list that are for consideration, and if so, when we might expect some action on them?
I can confirm that they are on the list. Warren House Road is the one where surveys were going to be undertaken, but SGN have been undertaking utility works and therefore traffic patterns have been different. So that's been postponed until next year once SGN are out the way. The second location, I'll need to find out the status of where that's got to.
Thank you. Councillor Rebecca Maggetts, please.
Thank you. My question's for Councillor Prouvé. Thank you for your latest update that we received yesterday regarding the funding issues for the sixth form at Bowhunt School. Potential parents in Finchampstead are genuinely concerned about this for the children that could potentially go to this sixth form, and they are worried that their children might be taught in temporary classrooms in September next year. Can you confirm if this is true?
The genuine answer is we don't know how quickly we can get this done. The aim is still to have everything done for September opening, but as you will recognise, over the last 6 months, costs have slightly changed, and we're working as hard as we can to deliver it. So there's no backing off by anybody, but it's a tight financial squeeze, and we will do our best to do it.
Thank you. I'd now like to invite the leader and executive members to give their statements. We've got 20 minutes for this item. Thank you. Councillor Prouvé, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think we all know that by now that Wokingham Borough Council is the lowest funded unitary authority in the country. What you may not know is our schools are in a similar situation, and schools in our area are the third worst funded in the country, behind only Rutland and Leicestershire. Before today's autumn, I think we're calling it a fiscal event or a statement or whatever it is, teaching unions and Tory MPs, which is a rather unlikely alliance, were calling on Jeremy Hunt not to further cut education funding, as previous decisions were leading to cuts to school budgets in 2023. The exact impact of those varies from school to school, but on average, schools in Wokingham were being predicted to lose the equivalent of £176 per pupil next September. And that's a bigger drop than any other area in Berkshire except Slough, and a bigger drop than Oxfordshire, Buckinghamshire, Surrey and Hampshire, which would of course make the funding gap between our schools and our neighbours' schools even worse. Now, I haven't had time to fully digest the impact of what was said today, but more money does seem to have been promised for schools over the next 2 years. We don't know yet exactly what that will mean for our schools locally, but perhaps it means a slight easing of the position. So our borough schools deliver amazing education with lower funding than almost everyone else. We need to do what we can to support them. And that's why I'm pleased to announce today that we have joined something called F40. F40 is an organisation that's lobbying for fairer school funding, and it gets its name from its membership being drawn from the 40 lowest local authorities with the lowest funded schools. Despite having been at or near the bottom of the funding table for more or less the entire time they're in charge, the Conservatives chose not to participate in this organisation. For the princely sum of less than £400 for the rest of the financial year, we have now put that right, and I look forward to us doing whatever we can to support fairer funding for all the borough's schools.
Thank you. Councillor Clive Jones, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. We have a cost of living crisis. Much of it the responsibility of Downing Street. It's estimated that the Truss Kwarteng Redwood budget of a few weeks ago added £30 billion to the black hole, or what is often referred to now as the blue hole, of 30 billion that was already there. I include John Redwood with responsibility because he clearly was fully behind Liz Truss and was the only MP prepared to defend her on television and radio. Only this week, we have heard from leaders of two of the largest county councils in the country, Kent and Hampshire, both currently controlled by the Conservatives. Their leaders said that whilst they recognised a very difficult national picture, they were calling on the Prime Minister to fund councils properly. Both leaders said that they faced budget deficits in coming years of a scale that they had never seen before. If ministers don't step in with immediate emergency help for local councils and a new long-term proper funding plan, then it's likely that these two local councils will join the list of councils going bust. We are doing all that we can to ensure that Wokingham does not go bust, even though we are and have been for over 8 years the lowest funded unitary authority in the country. Wokingham has been starved of cash by the Conservative government for far too long. We are a responsible administration and we don't want to go the same way as Slough and Conservative-controlled Thurrock, who have both sadly gone bust. In Wokingham, we have the added pressures of being left with a huge budget shortfall of 2.2 million by the Conservatives when they left power in May. They also didn't properly budget for the Winnish Park and Ride scheme, which is a shortfall of 1.3 million, and left no funding for 18 bus services after October 2022. We are expecting our settlement from the government a few days before Christmas. A few weeks ago, I wrote to the Chancellor asking for a proper settlement and one before the end of the year so that we could plan our budget properly for next year. No answer. It doesn't look like the government will find more money for local councils in today's budget, although we are not clear about that yet. No, they didn't, John. We do need more money from the government for Wokingham, which receives around 24 million less than other similar unitary authorities every year. That is 24 million pounds that we are unable to spend on local services such as road repairs, schools, adult social care for our residents in Wokingham. Wokingham Borough Council must be properly funded by the government, and we must send this message to the government very loudly and very clearly. And Madam Mayor, this extra funding is something that really has to come from the government. Thank you.
Councillor Sarah Kerr, please.
Have you finished?
Excuse me, there was foul language then, and I object very strongly. It came from over there. And I think that person should apologise or leave.
Is everyone finished? Thank you.
Thank you. And also, can I also add that language is not suitable in any meeting room, and particularly not here. So please don't do it again. Thank you.
Is everyone finished? I can just... No, they're talking. Thank you.
Sorry, can we, before we continue, can all members respect the person who's speaking by listening and not chatting or making comments? We would like to respect everybody to listen to the person who's speaking, please. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Brenda Blaney, Judith Armstrong, Frida Walker, Marlene Doyle, Lauren Moult, Yasmin Chikafi, Mariam Kamara, Lucy Powell, Marina Shaban, Lesma Jackson. These 10 women were all murdered. These 10 women were all murdered in January of this year. Since January this year, 85 women in the UK have been killed by a man or where a man is the principal suspect. In the year 2000, the United Nations designated the 25th of November as the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. The date, 25th of November, is based upon the 1960 assassination of 3 Mirabal sisters in the Dominican Republic. For a number of years before the UN resolution, the date has been marked by activists all over the world to raise awareness and combat violence against women. On the 10th of December, we have International Human Rights Day. And in between these two dates, we have the International 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence. Each year, the 16 Days of Activism has a theme, and this year the theme is Ending Femicide. Femicide being the killing of a woman or girl, in particular by a man, on account of her gender. 25th of November is also White Ribbon Day, as it is designed to coincide with the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. As this council chamber will be aware, White Ribbon is specifically about raising awareness of the role men play in eliminating violence against women and girls, and this is part of the wider Vogue agenda. The onus needs to shift away from what women need to do to keep themselves safe to tackling male behaviours. It's a minority of men, but all men can be part of calling it out, ending misogyny, promoting equality and respect, and making society safer for women and girls. I am delighted that we've committed as an organisation to taking a strategic approach to tackling violence against women and girls, and I encourage you all to play as full a part as possible in this. The 25th of November is fast approaching. In fact, it's a week tomorrow, and there are a number of events being held across the borough to raise awareness of the 16 Days of Activism by both us and our partner organisations. In particular, there is a vigil being held on 25th of November at 7 p.m. in Wokingham Town Marketplace, and will be a chance to reflect and remember those that we have lost in the last year due to femicide. I hope to see many of you there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rachel Bishop-Firth, please.
Thank you. Supporting our residents through the cost of living crisis is one of the council's main priorities this winter. As part of the Hardship Alliance, we are doing all that we can to support our residents who are struggling with rocketing bills for food, fuel, and now housing. We are supporting a network of warm spaces where residents can go during the coldest months to keep warm, enjoy activities with others, and if they need to ask for help with the issues that they're facing. We are distributing vouchers under the Household Support Fund to ensure that families who rely on free school meals in term time can continue to feed their children in the school holidays. As well as this, we are using the Household Support Fund to help other residents who can't afford essentials with grants and vouchers. The officers, along with Councillor Sarah Kerr, have launched a scheme to issue free reusable period products to those who can't afford this basic essential. This initiative both helps fight poverty and the climate emergency. We are also distributing other essentials, including blankets and energy efficient slow cookers, to help people keep warm this winter. The demand on both council officers and the voluntary sector is huge. Queries and referrals to their services have increased dramatically. Library staff will be helping to provide advice to residents. The old library building will be used as a vital storage space. We are asking residents, if you can help in any way, please volunteer, either with time or with donations. We're also looking ahead to the spring. The cost of providing Wokingham families who rely on free school meals with vouchers to cover meals and holidays is an estimated £600,000 each year going forward. We can only afford to provide this vital support to our most vulnerable children because we have the government funding through the Household Support Fund. Our current allocation runs out at the end of March, and at present we have no guarantee of any further funding. The Liberal Democrats have committed to funding vouchers for eligible families to cover the period up to and including the May half-term holiday in 2023. But with the gap between spending on essential services and the council's income, we will not be able to continue to provide these vouchers beyond May 2023 without help from the government. The autumn statement today referred to a continuation of the Household Support Fund, and we will confirm what this means for Wokingham as soon as we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fishwick.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Safe Drive, Stay Alive. I was fortunate enough to attend the Thames Valley Area Safe Drive, Stay Alive event held at the Hexagon Reading on Wednesday, the 2nd of November. The event was attended by many sixth form and colleges across the region aimed at young people. There was a film about a series of serious and life-changing events that was broken by hard-hitting, real-life talks given by staff representing the Royal Berkshire Fire and Rescue, Thames Valley Police, Ambulance Service, an NHS surgeon, mother of a 19-year-old daughter that was involved in a fatal accident, a lady who had been speeding and left with lifelong injuries, a court judge, and a person who'd been jailed for death by dangerous driving. The event was opened and closed by an officer from Wokingham Borough Council. The points that were highlighted in the Safe Drive Stay Alive, although aimed at the age group of the audience, actually can be applied to all in the community who drive or travel in a car. The second point I'd like to make is about local bus services and a driver shortage. There is a growing local bus shortage locally as well as nationally, as current drivers leave and join the HGV industry, and this has been exacerbated by previous government ministers incentivising recruitment where wages were already up to a third higher. Local bus wages make up around 67% of all costs and fuel around 15%. Passenger numbers are down on pre-pandemic levels, but are growing and now stand at around 81%. However, rising costs are a significant pressure and make commercial services less attractive, as well as supported services, especially with lack of further financial support from Wokingham Borough Council. That's already made available an additional £450,000 between the 1st of October 2022 and the 31st of March 2023. The local bus services are seeing ad hoc cancellations, and Wokingham Borough Council, as well as neighbouring authorities, are working with bus operators to give passengers certainty as to which journeys will operate. I have therefore written to the new Secretary of State for Transport, the Right Honourable Mark Harper MP, to highlight the situation and copied in our local MPs and the chair of the Local Government Association, who has responded with very positive comments. I hope the new Secretary of State for Transport will also respond positively. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm now going on to statements from council-owned companies. Do I have a speaker? Thank you.
Well, you do and you don't. I've decided that in the interest of trying to get to at least the first of the motions.
Sorry.
I'm being informed I'm too late. We're too late already to get to the motions. So in that case, I will give you the statement that I was about to generously not give. I wanted to really take the opportunity to inform the council that this morning we held the first, and I have to say very successful, common purposes meeting for the council-owned housing companies. The aim is to share perspectives, discuss common concerns and create greater strategic alignment to make sure that we're all working to the same common objectives. Separate meetings also took place today of the boards of Loddon Homes and Berrybrook and WHL. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much for that. And I must say, I'm sorry, I'm closing the meeting. We have no time for the motions. But I also like to wish everybody a happy Christmas and New Year. And I hope you have a lovely seasonal time. Thank you. And thank you for the food bank gifts. Meeting finished. Thank you.